Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. It is a bright, beautiful Monday morning in America. It is it's a new day, gentlemen. It's a new week. We got a little bit of a stretch and a breather behind us after that crazy week from last week. Crazy in that, so much winning that, it's like sometimes you just have too much winning and you don't know what to do with it. I felt like kind of that's what last week felt like. So we got a new week. We're cautiously optimistic going into the next week. This channel has been very much kind of on one hand be optimistic, but on the other hand keep your powder dry. You never know when trouble's going to come. But hopefully by watching the Council on Future Conflicts, you can become more prepared. This is episode 441. We're talking the Lunatic Fringe actions that we've seen here over the weekend. And then also some Trump transition stuff. We just lost Jen. Joe, how you doing today, brother?
You know what? I'm not bad. It's a Monday morning before we get ready to depart for class. We got class coming up in Missouri this weekend. Good number of guys signed up for community security class, almost like folks are a little concerned about the aftermath of the election. But we're going to have some fun. So I'll be on the road for Wednesday's show, and I won't make it on Friday, but we got things going on, man. It's good stuff. I got tires for the first time in Montana and learned a few things about winter tires here that I didn't know in Michigan. So interesting lecture from the tire people. So
they said, now listen, this is this is the wilderness up here, boy. You gotta
well, listen, last Monday or Tuesday, getting home, crossing two different mountain passes in actual whiteout conditions.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, we need to upgrade the tires a little bit.
Did they tell you about the studs yet?
Oh yeah. And here you could have changed on your tires and studded tires, all kinds of wild stuff. So crazy.
All right. It keeps dropping out.
That's because he's trying to solve for an audio issue. It looks like.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like a winter is shaping up there in. Hold on a second here. Story for $10 says, anyone interested in the X group chat where we share memes and chat about the show, please hit me up on X. I'm posting the link below. My DMs are locked down, but let me know if you are, and I'll get you. All right, cool. That's a good idea, Stormy.
Little CFC fan channel. I like that.
I like it too. Definitely make sure that I drop it in there and join up once you guys get that going.
Will there be topics?
That's what I want to know. I would say, Joe, this would be the location of the exclusive home for toe picks and other,
Joe asking the important question.
PG, of course, imagery. So, Pinochet's helicopter tours for $2 says, anyone notice uptick in TT cops? It's quiet. Yeah. We're going to talk about that. There's been some stuff going on, but at the same time, it's kind of Joe, I don't know if there's a kind of odd calm before the storm kind of thing going on, but let's be honest, there's some stuff happening, and we're going to talk about that in our first segment today.
Yes, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and you know what? It's going to get a little bit weird. I think that you're going to see a big ramp up. I think that they were in shock for the first few days. And we saw some ramping up over the weekend, but I think it's just going to, by next weekend, it's going to be completely off the chain. So,
I think I'm of two opinions, Joe. Either they're gonna take action before the inauguration, and we'll see these kind of because we already started to see some protests kind of popping up in different places, or they're going to keep it fairly quiet, and then they're going to pop off after the inauguration, and then blame Trump for whoa, it's because of him, and and that way, the Biden administration is unburdened by the the negative activity. So we'll see. I don't know where it's going to go. That one's beyond me at this point. Watcher, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. Celebrated another Marine Corps birthday by myself, but it was good. Celebrated it by myself with others via digital, so that was nice. Just getting work done, and what can I say? It's a good time. It feels good to be productive.
Well, I mean, productive's good. And generally productive puts money in your pocket. So I mean, there's that too.
The plan. Right before the holidays too. So
well, and I can imagine being out in the boondocks of wherever it is you're at. I can imagine that also goes, it makes you a little safer probably than say somebody.
That was the thinking.
Area.
Yeah, that's why the missus and the kids decided to take a little 2-week camping vacation and come spend time with me while I get set up here.
I think Patrick. I think she's doing a DM group, is what I think she's doing.
Yup, it'll be a group chat over on X.
Over on X, yeah. And by the way,
what you're looking for are toe picks, Patrick. We know the truth. That's what you're looking for.
Well, it says here that toe picks are optional, so
you have to pay a little extra. It's okay. It's premium.
It's freemium, yeah.
By the way, I meant to show everyone, but I am wearing the obligatory Smokey the Bear shirt in Montana. I have to worry about forest fires. So when I saw they had these at Murdoch's, I was like, I got to get one. So I got one. My son got one. It's good times.
Well, I'm just telling you, y'all are screwed because Smokey told me that only I could prevent forest fires. So
only you.
All right, gentlemen. Let's see. I tell you what, guys. Instead of is there anything hot that we want to talk about before we jump into odds and ends?
Yeah, nothing hot. I want to talk about Alpha Charlie concepts because he said he decided to open his mouth. Yeah. He has stolen my friend 0241 Tactical, who makes outstanding gear. Sells it right in his shop in Hamilton, Montana, and has taken him practically forcibly to Florida. I won't say where, but I don't want to dox people. But so I am upset about that, and Alpha Charlie Concepts is no longer my friend. So,
well, I mean, maybe some, if we had some Alpha Charlie Concepts to gear to put into a some sort of a giveaway pack. So that might.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so angry that I was tempted to send back all of the very sweet Alpha Charlie Concepts provided chest rigs and.
But in Montana, it's so the post office is so far away.
It's such a drive to go mail it.
Too much trouble.
And that does not sound like a guy who wants me to come down there this winter. Okay.
What are you talking about? You want to come to Florida in the worst way during the winter. You're like, after a couple of weeks in Montana, full-on Montana winters, you're like, so that trip.
I know. That's why I'm so happy that Matt's class is scheduled in February, the coldest part of the year, but I'm not here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to teach one before his and maybe one after. And,
Being from around that area, my wife did turn to me 2 years ago and goes, "Why do we live in a place where the air hurts my face for half the year?"
I'll be honest with you, man. Like when I moved back to the States, I'm looking almost exclusively in southern, like south of the Mason-Dixon line for places to live.
Natalie, we'll have to see. I don't know yet. I haven't. It's a lot further of a drive, so I don't know how much time I'm going to dedicate down south. We will see.
You know who's going to be in Louisville over Christmas, New Year's time frame?
No. Oh, really? Yeah. You know what's funny is your dad. If you're watching, you can confirm this, Bobby. I was driving, and as soon as I hit the Kentucky line, I get a text message from your dad, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" Just kind of a back and forth conversation. But I think he suspected I was in the area, but it would have been an extra 4 hours to pop over there. So Next time I make it that way, I'll make a pointed plan to go and see Pops McCullough and hang out with him.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being back and going home for the Derby Pie. Blaine's not wrong. Absolutely. Yeah, so I can't see my family in Louisiana. As you know, I've been there. It's very interesting. My time at JRTC did not, I enjoyed my time physically there, but JRTC was a slog. Yes, Natalie remembers the pie. Yes, I remember. We all had way too much Derby pie that day.
Well, listen, the second batch made by Watcher under the watchful eye of Bobby McCullough was pretty darn good.
That was excellent. And you know what? The thing that shocked me, and it wasn't that your first round wasn't, the fresh pie wasn't good. The thing that shocked me was that the next morning, that pie that had overnighted in the refrigerator, that was amazing. It was, just
let it sit up a little bit.
Yeah, that was really good.
Hold on. I just got to say, Squishy Hunters got you pegged.
JRTC kid. Here's the funny thing, right? Like, so I go into high school and JRTC is one of the options that I have, right? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. It's Army stuff, right? And then I did it, and I was like, never again.
This is
never
gay.
Again.
I have a different opinion on it because every year we used to do a march on, it would have been yesterday, we do a 4-mile ruck thing. But hundreds of JROTC kids in Detroit do it with us from the high school.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's literally the only hope some of those kids have of getting out of that is Detroit. So.
I think it's one of those kind of things. It's for some people, it's the best thing going, right? Especially the kind of kids that never had access to scouting and things like that.
Yeah.
Especially urban kids, I think. It gives you some structure. It gives you some, role models and things like that. For me, like having come up in Boy Scouts and I was pretty rebellious by the time I was a freshman in high school. It just wasn't a good fit for me. Though I will say we did have a gun range under the basketball court in my school, and we shot 22s at school, which was kind of, I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of absolutely unheard of in this day and age.
Shooting team. Well,
that's right. School shooting team.
My local high school actually just restarted one 2 years ago under the tutelage of an Olympian shooter, which I thought was fucking amazing. But yes, more like this needs to be like a standard high school thing.
Yeah, that strikes me as a Montana thing. I'm gonna have to ask around because here, literally everyone open carries, and it's both a handgun and a long fixed blade knife. And you know what? I'm down. These are my people, so this is pretty solid.
Peter Shays Helicopter Tours over in Rumble for $2 says, happy 249th birthday to the Marines from our veteran of 390-year-old U.S. Army. Army because Marines need heroes too. All right.
Oh, Lord. That's crazy. Just a few weeks ago, the Royal Marines had their 600 and something year anniversary. The only other Marine Corps that is that. Oh, do you know the second oldest Marine Corps other than the British Royal Marines?
What's that?
The Dutch Royal Marines.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, because the Dutch were a huge naval power back in the 15 and 1600s.
Yeah, and I have done some time with both in the field, and outstanding. The Brotherhood of Marines is pretty massive. So.
Blaine says, when I went to high school, kids drove trucks to school with rifle racks in their back windows with rifles, and no one thought a thing about it. Yeah, so I went to high school. Kids drove 57 Chevys. No, I was going to say, what Blaine doesn't tell you is that those rifles in those racks were rifled muskets. So,
I'll be honest. I'm of about the same age as Blaine, and when I went to high school, our truck, my dad had a gun rack in the back, and when we went up north hunting, there were guns in it. I mean, it's just the way it is. And we only tease you
Blaine, if you were here to defend yourself, I
think Captain Dolio just got killed off in book 6.
Uh-oh.
Exactly right. He's like, I'm taking notes. All right. Guys, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and so I think we'll probably catch most of it in our two main topics. But there were a couple things that popped up over the weekend that I wanted to. This was one of those kind of things. It is related to the new president coming in, but ultimately, it's just too good on its own not to let it get shuffled into one of our main kind of topics.
Well, and real quick before we move on, Squishy brings up.
One, by the way.
I've
been by hunch. So
well, but before we move on, I think
this
Squishy
is my last one too.
I think Squishy puts a good cap on that conversation. Remember, when that POS climbed the tower at the U of Texas, the first responders were all students and professors who grabbed rifles out of their cars.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this later. I think it's a good idea. Joe brings up a good point and counter to this, but ultimately, it's one of those kind of things that sometimes the meme,
Yeah, the answer is but yes, but yeah. We'll
yes, but right, exactly. All right. All right, Stormy, we got you. So this DM group will probably be a big DM group, and it'll be a great place to just kind of share things, and it'll be fun, I guess. I'll let Stormy set the pace there. It's not my group, it's Stormy's group, but it sounds like it can be a lot of fun. All right, the first story of the day today in odds and ends is Qatar orders Hamas leaders to leave after U.S. requests. So my question is this, guys. I mean, where else can they go? Maybe Iran. I guess Iran is really,
Well, I have a suggestion, but
I'll tell them exactly where they can go.
Straight to hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Well, if they go to Syria, that definitely would be their final destination, I think.
They may have some opportunity in some of the stands to go there.
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, I think Iran is probably where they'll end up, just because, honestly, nobody else wants them. I mean, Iran still is the main backer for Hamas, and I gotta wonder that their bank accounts are probably going to have to get transferred to Iran for that to happen, though. So, several media reports, sources have been claiming that the government of Qatar has ordered the leaders of Hamas to leave the country following pressure from Washington. Let's be honest, following pressure from a newly elected Donald Trump. And that's not overt pressure. That's just him existing. Financial Times is amongst the other major outlets that are reporting that the request was made around 10 days ago after intense discussions with U.S. officials, to one person familiar with the matter. A lot of discussions going on 10 days ago, but note the actual date that they released that this information pops up, right?
Huh. Yeah.
The Hamas leadership has been present in the capital of Doha since 2012. Prior to that, it's been long based out of Damascus, but Assad government booted Hamas after it sided against him and allied with the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda forces during the proxy war. That's kind of ironic, don't you think, Joe?
Yes, I do. This whole thing is just weird. I don't understand the timing of it. I mean, I guess I do, but why did we not demand this the first go-round of Donald Trump?
Right. Well, so here's the interesting thing. Not only is Hamas there, but so I'm just going to skip down to further into the article. It says here, Hamas leaders being in Doha has remained an awkward, contradictory arrangement as Qatar is also host to the largest U.S. troop presence in the Middle East. U.S. CENTCOM's forward headquarters is located at Al-Udeid, right? I can't remember. I can always say that one wrong. I hear it, Udeid, right? Isn't that what it is? Al-Udeid. Anyway, Al-Udeid Air Base, which can house more than 10,000 American troops. There is growing frustration amongst Qatari mediators about the statement made regarding the intentions of the officials in Doha. I mean, it's just weird having so many of us in Qatar and Hamas too. It's almost like maybe we should have pressured them a long time ago not to allow that to happen. It's almost like we should get something for all the money we probably pour into that country.
Yes.
What's that, Scott? The U.S. should get something back for aid that we give? Oh, my goodness. That's what a concept.
I hate to say it, but, you know, it's one of those kind of things where this is like a centerpiece of Trump's foreign policy, and that governments take advantage of us. And basically, you know, we do whatever it is we do, and then they basically say, oh, yes, sir. And then behind our backs, they just give us the finger, and everybody is kind of laughing at us over it. Let's see, there's been some confusion despite all current international reports whether Qatar is actually complying with the U.S. demand. Hamas has not been informed that they are unwelcome in Doha. That's Al Arabiya says. Citing informed sources, Al Arabiya says that information reported by the media outlets, including the Times of Israel, is inaccurate. However, Arab officials tells the Times of Israel and Al Arabi report is false, calling it a smokescreen put on by sources who do not support the decision to oust Hamas. So basically, one side says, yeah, it's happening, and the other side says, no, it's not happening. But ultimately, let's be honest, with Trump inbound, things will be very different by the time Trump takes office. Now, Jim, do we have you back?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go. You sound crystal clear. Jim, how you doing, brother?
Good. Busy.
We were just talking about this report where all of a sudden the Qatar said, "Hey, Hamas, get the fuck out."
Yeah, no money, no love.
I get the feeling that Hamas is basically on a shoestring at this point. I mean, let's be honest. Most of them have been blown up, and their bank accounts have been seized.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the relationships are very durable and very, very mutual until which time they're not. So all of a sudden they're not, and I think the Qataris see which side of that pita has the potential for getting some lamb.
Yeah. Let's see. Hey, guys, anything else on this? This is another opportunity for us to kind of mention some of the other things. We had also heard that the Yemen had, recently kind of changed their stances. And we've also heard that the Taliban have basically said, how do we get back on the good boy list after being on the naughty list for the last, 22 years or whatever? There's clearly some things changing.
Start.
Say again?
Suicide is a good start.
Well, look, man, I'm excited in some ways for what this reporter's talking about, because do you know where the next place they're likely to run is? And I agree with her. It's either going to be Turkey or Iran. And
yeah.
Iran's not going to want to host them on their own soil. So it's probably going to be Turkey.
Yeah, it says here. Yeah, well, I was going to say
the Taliban problem is that they become good communists.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Jim, have you seen any other kind of interesting shifts in relationships since the election? It doesn't have to necessarily be in the Middle East, but I just think it's interesting, all these kind of unconnected changing of positions. And, it's like there's a sea change.
Everything is up in the air. So the whole globalist assumption base has just been shaken, right? So let's see if Trump and DC can get out of their own way and put this together.
Yeah.
Remember my moniker, I always remain hopeful. So I was hopeful given this outcome. I hope that there are not entities in DC who drag their feet and sabotage the attempts to reset the way we operate our government. And some of those entities will be foreign, and let's hope that they're not in cahoots with a bunch of the guys who work in DC professionally. I think Trump is well positioned to actually take advantage of the changes, and let's hope he does.
Well, Jim, you and Blaine are two kind of prominent members of the council who have been on the more positive side when it comes to this kind of stuff. Are you feeling like it's going that way? The trend is in a more positive direction, or do you still think it's like it literally could go? It could go either way.
Well, I think the thing that's always had me stand apart from the dark, backward, limited capacity thinking you guys do all the time. Yeah, that's
Thanks. Is that a
the,
backhanded
the thing that's
compliment?
always the thing that's always held me apart is I'm always hopeful in the average American. I just run it when I run into them.
Yeah,
A lot of them
I
keep
get
their
that.
head down, and I had assumed that everybody was keeping their head down and keeping their own counsel, and now I know they were right, and so I'm most excited that the young people were lying about their choices for presidency. Right? They lied every day. It's like, oh, you going to vote for Trump? Oh no, of course not. I do want to get laid, but I don't want to vote for Trump. Right? So yeah, you had this really interesting dynamic where the youngins were not giving true information when they were queried, and I think that went across society. Americans like the privacy attributes, and I think
Yeah.
that they're a lot more sensible than the pundits gave them credit for. And I think we get kind of dark because we deal with so many dark issues. Uh, but you got to have that. I remain hopeful in the average Joe, and that's how I approached it, and it seems to have worked out in my favor.
I think you are correct there.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say I was pleasantly surprised as well. Same thing. A lot of people keeping their heads down, keeping their powder dry, and not what you expect out of the undisciplined.
Yeah, yeah. And I think
Well,
I think the multilateral stuff. I think what you'll see is a lot of new bilaterals, and it's where Trump screwed up in Trump one. They didn't go out and do the necessary bilateral negotiations, and that's because the folks that were behind him in Washington didn't want him to have any successes. So he should have done very tight bilaterals with the Japanese, with the British, with the Koreans, um, and that was kind of withheld from him. So hopefully this time they come out the gate swinging and go do all of this hardcore framework restructuring of relationship with our key allies. Sorry, John. I think I stepped on you.
um, all right. Well, we're going to kind of get into that a little more in the main topics, but why this is another kind of knock-on effect of the election result, but I think it's very much it's hard to say that it's performative because I think that they mean it, but it's funny how people are kind of tripping over themselves making statements about well Trump hasn't even made a thing, hasn't even like made a statement about us, but ultimately we have to say something, right? And we've gotten reports out of NATO that NATO is trying to future-proof NATO against, or Trump-proof NATO, right? So that Trump can't negatively affect the alliance. It's being reported that Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, has warned in the event of Donald Trump hands over Ukraine to Russia, just take a load of that sentence right there, right? The United States of America will be excluded from the NATO alliance.
In
Let me
other
read that
words,
one more.
NATO is making way too much money from their defense industries off this war to let it end.
To let it end. Right. That's exactly right.
Well,
The globalists don't want this war to end.
Let me answer that with an oldie but a goodie. Oh no, Brer Bear, don't throw me into that briar patch. That would be awful.
I know. It's my tweet was like, "Do you promise?"
Like, we
So
already elected him. Why are we still trying to sell it?
you don't have to sell me. I'm already for him
So,
again.
so just to understand the whole dynamic, look at that little guy sitting there with Trump, and then pan hard right over by the lamp, and then you understand exactly.
He's like, oh, if Trump touched my knee, I'll never wash my knee again. Not that I did anyway, because I'm a European and I'm dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I mean,
yeah, everybody is trying to make bank, right? And they're not at the point where they can rely on their own defense establishment, but they all want to open their own defense manufacturing, and that's great. But that doesn't mean they can operate without the United States, because we are the cohesion of NATO. right? We're the cohesion of all our relationships. We own the important little bits. And they don't have global communication capacity. They don't have blue water navy. They don't have deployable air force in volume. Not that we do, but they have a deeper problem than we do. And what he said was, if you try to mess with NATO writ large, then we'll kick you out. Nobody's messing with NATO writ large.
Yeah.
Trump is messing with NATO one by one, which is your national responsibility is to support NATO. And you have not been, or you are. So the Poles are in really good position. They are. The Baltic dwarfs are. But everybody's saber rattling on our behalf. That's the part I don't think Trump will appreciate, which is stop the saber rattling. I'm not giving Ukraine back to Russia, but Ukraine may not get Crimea back. That's what I've heard, right?
Right.
And Russia has had Crimea for a long time. It isn't like it's new. And so they're negotiating over things that are difficult to negotiate about.
And if I remember correctly, Crimea actually voted to rejoin Russia.
Well, it was populated heavily with Russians.
With Russians, yeah, with Russian citizens.
Well, that's you know how this would look if it was Americans.
Yeah.
The Marines, God bless them, happy birthday, crayons all around. The Marines would have been sent in, and they would have sorted it out in a matter of days. But we have a very interesting problem, which is the expectation level that was set vis-a-vis this Ukraine war has really caused a distortion in reality. There's very little we can do regarding Donetsk and Luhansk and the areas that have been seized, and there's very little we can do about Crimea. So the false expectations that are driven by Ukraine and the false expectations that have been driven by NATO, again, pan right, go look at the Walrus Man. These neocon expectations are just fantasy. We need pragmatism. We need to get back to work. And I'm just terribly sorry that thousands and hundreds of thousands of young people have died unnecessarily. And then we begin the next big grift, which is rebuilding Ukraine. And everybody's queuing up at the border for the $1 trillion. We have to build a free, democratic, modern European country in Ukraine and make it part of NATO. And that's going to be fraught with challenge. So. Well,
the irony is that if Trump is able to make hay while the sun shines on this and actually get a ceasefire declared, even if it's like an armistice, like a Korea-style armistice, right? That basically freezes the front line and then puts in the DMZ. That's kind of one of the things he's been talking about. And then NATO comes in kind of like the UNC in Korea. And then so you've got NATO acting as the guarantor of Ukrainian. But, in order for Russia to go for that, Russia's going to have to keep all the land that they've seized. And then the other part of that is they're going to force Ukraine to basically become a neutral state. I think that they would be more than happy to go to some sort of a kind of a frozen conflict, Cold War scenario that allows them to then basically, culturally enrich the Russian portion, so it never wants to go back to Russia. I could see that happening, and if that were to happen, then the Trump administration would control the U.S. interest of the rebuilding efforts. And I'll be honest with you, while there may be some sore feelings over the next couple years, I think in the long run, the U.S. would come out smelling like roses if they were to be able to, because the Ukrainians are dying by the bucket loads right now, and they're running out of men, and they only have like about 9 months worth of soldiers left.
What's funny is even the last time around, the NATO ministers and heads of defense all talked defiantly towards Trump, but every one of them raised their defense spending as he demanded. So he doesn't care what they say. What matters is what they do.
Yeah.
And the truth is there's no NATO without the United States. So they can say whatever they want. It's an empty threat. No one is ever going to kick the United States out of NATO. So
the other thing that's ironic, right? So the money bonanza for European defense spending it was so low that European defense spending was so low that there was hardly any industrial base associated with they didn't have a defense industrial base to really speak of outside of some of their bespoke projects and things like that were so expensive and so small. And let's be honest, they were at least a generation behind most of the high-end American stuff. Now, you know how we feel about high-end stuff. It's almost worthless in a protracted situation. But ultimately, they missed out. Europe missed out on making a lot of money off of Ukraine because they just didn't have a defense. I mean, it's like South Korea is the one making all the money in Europe because, when Poland wanted to buy a bunch of tanks, the only place they could get them really for the price, at the right price and the right terms was South Korea. All right. Let's anything else on this, guys? NATO clearly, they're not a fan of Trump, and I can understand why. But then again, you guys know how we feel about NATO, so who cares?
Yeah, I think you're going to see the Russians kind of spin up a little bit here and begin to justify the disengagement. So between here and the disengagement, whatever that may be, it's going to get ugly. So.
Yeah.
And then you'll find people running around with their tin cups trying to fill them with as many weapon systems as they can. You saw a flurry of anti-aircraft systems being shipped to Ukraine. But we're burning a lot of stuff between Israel and Ukraine. We're burning an immense amount of munitions.
Yeah. Stormy asks, are we the only ones who pay our dues to NATO? Well, no, it's not really dues to NATO, right? I mean, yes, we fund the NATO budget, but the NATO budget is not big. The big part is the required 2% of defense spending of GDP, right? And so that was one of the like Joe had just mentioned. When Trump went in there during his first term, he basically said, you guys are all living off of our largesse and you're not paying your fair share. Like most of the European countries, the big countries, were less than 1%. And so some of them raised it. Poland, most notably. Poland is like, guys, I don't remember if you guys know the figure, but it's something like 3% of GDP or something like that now.
It's 3 to 4, yeah.
Yeah, it's big. Like we're traditionally 4% GDP for our defense spending. But of course, our GDP is the largest GDP in the world. So of course, our defense spending is massive. But, and a couple of the countries were like 1.1, 1.2, but nobody was at 2%, right? And then they all ticked up a little bit after that, like Joe said. And then once the war started, then they're like, holy shit, we're in trouble. It's like Joe, do you remember when the war started? Germany had literally one company of tanks is about all they could have rolled out.
Like in a combined arms thing, they could roll out maybe a battalion, right?
A battalion of heavy battalion, yeah, which is not a battalion of tanks. It's all it's a mix.
A company of tanks, a battalion, or a couple companies of infantry. And what's funny is a lot of us here in America, we think every country is the size of America. But when you're Europe and there's a war in Ukraine, that's like there being a war in Pennsylvania when you live in Michigan. Right. It's a much more condensed area.
It's a close
landmass of Europe is about the same as the U.S. So they're a lot closer together.
Hey, Jim, you were in Europe back in the 90s, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk real quick about when things were really kicking off in, between Bosnia and Chechnya and Serbia, there was a lot of Europeans that got a real weird feeling from what I remember. I mean, I was in college at the time. So you probably have but people felt that war because it was not far away, especially places like Greece, Italy, Austria. These countries are all southern Germany, very close to all that action.
Yeah, the proximity issue people don't tend to get here because we've got the oceans and stuff. But when Bosnia and Serbia and that area was kicking off, people were scrambling around, I'll use an example of the Germans. The Germans were asked to do something in Bosnia, and the Germans had never deployed internationally before. And it's just not something they did. And so this RFP, urgent, gets dropped on my desk, and they said, what the hell are these guys asking for? And I said, they're asking for a single satellite uplink. And they're like, well, why would they do that? I said, because they've got a downlink somewhere. Yeah. And it was Germans. And I looked at them, I said, they must be having to deploy somewhere. And I said, are they part of this NATO kind of, we're going to go to the Balkans routine? And he said, yeah. I said, so that's what they want. I said, they want a trailerable little satellite antenna. So they had no comms for out of theater work. But that's how they all thought. Right? It was, we're going to go from here to Fulda. We're going to stop Fulda, and then we're going to fall back, and we'll keep falling back until the American heavy units arrive. And it was the Reforger 101. Yeah. And that's when I think people began to figure out that whole approach to Europe was not a good idea. But then they went the wrong way and completely demodded, right? So they sold everything and stopped buying anything new, and we went into the beautiful peace dividend. Nobody built anything new. That's just the way to put it. That's how we all ended up with the F-35. So in European parlance, we went from the F-104 to the F-35. So it'll be interesting to watch the hodgepodge remill of Europe, and I know they're trying to buy their systems instead of ours, and there's a lot of 3- and 4-way cooperation underway to build systems that are competitive with what Lockheed and Northrop Grumman make.
Well, the interesting thing there, Jim, is that they want to buy European systems ultimately, right? They want to onshore their money, just like we want to onshore our money. But ultimately, it's a kind of well, if we do that, we're not going to get a new tank for 6-7 years, right? Because we have to not just build the tank, but we have to build the factory and the tooling in order to build the tank, because we decided to get rid of all that.
Well, one of the interesting, so if you want to look at the exciting stuff, look at what's happening in 155 mobile artillery with smart rounds. A lot of them, everybody's got their platform of choice. Go look at what the Koreans are selling, and see that the Polish have bought Korean heavy battle tanks, because the Koreans make really good stuff and they love selling it. So same thing in patrol craft in that arena, sophisticated builders and sellers. And it's good enough to be world class, right? And the next thing is going to be aviation systems. So the thing they focused on first and foremost are the consumables, because that's a pain in the ass. And then it's very complex systems like aviation and communications and guided weapons. The pattern seems to be forming across Europe. There are at least 3 people in every project. And if the Americans were smart, they would dive into some of these projects and see if they couldn't get some good ideas. But Americans like to run it alone. But a lot of good innovation happened.
Well, it'll be interesting. Because Jim, one of the things that one of the first points that you brought up way back when we started worrying about larger war, and we've all said this. This is not something you uniquely said, but you're the first one that I remember saying this on the council, was talking about how standard 3 missiles, and 6 missiles are going to run out, but the no cost, low cost drones are just going to keep on coming in, right? So they're going to run our magazines dry. And oh, by the way, Joe? It's $1 million plus per shot for us to shoot down a $5,000 drone. That's not a sustainable way to. So I think there's going to be some development coming in the next 5 to 10 years. So our defense is going to look a lot different than the kind of legacy of the Cold War that we're still relying on.
So our problem is always that we want to go with the highest tech solution we have, when really the way to defeat low-level, slow-moving drones like that is the CWIS. We just say, no, we got to shoot it as far out as we can with our expensive missile and show everybody how cool we are. Better thing to do would have let them get closer, and CWIS would have made short work of them. But we have to use the most expensive, most high-tech method every time. It's weird.
So when you're dealing with the Navy and you're saying, okay, you've got a slant range of 100 miles to the target, and the target is passing over the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it's an issue, right? So you're not going to get the CRAM or whatever they call the land-based version, because it's just not there. Saudis are not going to expend on it because it's just going to go all the way across towards Israel. So you're stuck using a SM3 or one of the new advanced interceptors that cost even more.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, the ability. I saw this in Ukraine too. It's like when we gave them our wonderful anti-tank systems, it's not like they blew through the laws and the N laws first. They blew through all the expensive stuff first. It's like you'd have a Russian guy running down a tree line, and they put a $75,000 warhead in there and kill him. And that's just a training thing, which is don't waste that on that. Use something else. And we've seen over time they've run out of things like 30 millimeter armor piercing rounds. Everybody loves that 30 millimeter gold grenade, right? But they're done. They're gone. It's old stock, right? So somebody needs to produce that in volume or something to replace it. So it's been interesting to watch.
Well, one of the things so I guess on the note of innovation, and we'll kind of cap this here. I don't want to get too in the weeds on systems and whatnot, but one of the systems I thought that the innovations is shooting anti-air 155 rounds. So essentially these are, artillery rounds that are, probably more expensive than just a standard dumb iron bomb.
Old school flak kind of deal, right?
Well, right. But it's a new twist on old idea, right? Where you could turn any artillery thing into an anti-air system. And I think that's an interesting idea. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for to come out of this problem set that we're essentially in. Now, I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't have to be like if the drones are $5,000, right? These Shahed drones that Russia's firing, the Iranian Shahed drones that Russia's now building by the bushel load and firing into Ukraine. You don't have to have a $5,000 kind of solution for that, right? You can have a $50,000 solution, which is way cheaper than $1 million solution, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be way better than what you're using. Joe, I mean, like, could you imagine if you had guns on like 155 guns on naval ships again to be able to use that kind of a solution, because
or
right now we don't have
3 to 5 inchers that we used to have.
Exactly right. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, so if you had something, because we don't really even have those. You have the single. What is it? A single 5-inch, or is it a 3-inch?
No, it's a 3. It's a single 3-inch on most. Or even like
they shoot fast though.
That you used to have, right?
Yeah, the Bofors, right? The pom-pom 40 millimeter guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, all munitions are going to become smart. I think it's kind of the way to think of this, and it's all going to be bolt-on and modularized. I just don't understand why they're not issuing 12-gauge shotguns to these little groups of guys they send out in the woods. And it's like
the anti-drone,
watching them run away from the drones. Just put a bunch of tungsten pellets on it, and chances are it'll explode far away from you, right? That's all you can do.
This we need solutions like this that.
Yeah, that's a combat solution right there.
Yeah, just throw the cat at the drone at high velocity.
I know, right?
It'll definitely bring the drone down.
Oh boy. Anyway, I don't know why he usually never comes in here during the show, but like he was literally pawing at the door for like 5 minutes. So
you heard my voice.
I know your sweet dulcet tones.
Love me.
All right, guys, let's jump into our last odds and ends. So Joe, I'm sorry, Joe. Jim, this one is for you. I mean, when I saw you were coming, I was like, well, we need a Jim thing to jump in on. China.
Does it have to do with nail color?
Nail color. Well, I mean, sorry to disappoint you, brother.
Oh, the delimiting.
Yeah, because as soon as because this is the salami slicing in the kind of that legal lawfare arena, right? That international lawfare arena, and it's interesting that China's trying to use the international law against the targets, right? Because ultimately international law doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
But
So basically, what China has said is we are international law.
Right.
It's you take all your international law nonsense, and we're going to give you all of our international law, which is not nonsense because it's ours. That's how the party asserts. So they move past the internal discussions, and they're just going to assert. And
So,
Coasties, pay attention because I'm about to compliment you, which is very rare. Very,
you
very
got to
rare.
get it in on Veterans Day, Joe. You got to get them all in.
So when you look at this ship on here, notice that every Coast Guard in the world, with the exception of maybe Canada and their silly yellow ships, tries to paint their ships to look like the United States Coast Guard. So China can say all they want; they're still trying to copy our Coast Guard with that paint scheme.
That's so funny.
Yeah, we're not any threat to you. Disregard the laser designator that's on your fridge.
Yeah, disregard the 3-inch cannon forward of our bridge here.
Yeah, they're going to get a lot of pushback. So basically, what's happened is Vietnam has militarized a reef. The Malaysians came and said, "Hey, don't do that. That's ours." But I think that was at the behest of the Chinese, because what happened is the place that the Vietnamese chose to militarize a reef had basically leapt over a position on a reef/bank that China had just recently built as their forward radar site in the southeastern corner off Borneo. And by putting the Vietnamese between you and them, the Vietnamese can put up a bunch of noise and screw with that radar. So this is going to be incrementalism. But what the Chinese did here is not salami slicing. This is a whole giant stick of mortadella that got tossed on the table. You can hear that big bouncy schwack of the mortadella hitting the table. That's what this is. What are those, like 10-pound sticks? I'm not from Ohio. I don't know anything about American style pressed meat, but this is a giant mortadella. You can look one up on the internet.
Let me kind of get into this a little more and just kind of talk about what this means, right? Because to the layman, this may seem kind of, well, let me be honest, Greek. So let me kind of get into this. The Foreign Ministry on Sunday posted online geographic coordinates for the baselines around the Scarborough Shoal. A national territorial waters and exclusive economic zones are typically defined as the distance from the baselines. And that's what they're getting about, like, delimiting, right? Like, so both China and the Philippines claim the Scarborough Shoal and their outcroppings in the South China Sea. China seized the shoal, which lies west of the main Philippine island of Luzon, in 2012, and has since restricted access to Filipino fishermen there. A 2016 ruling by the International Arbitration Court found that most Chinese claims in the South China Sea were invalid, but Beijing refused to abide by it. Ships from China and the Philippines have collided. I mean, we've talked about this. The China's move came 2 days after Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signed 2 laws demarcating the government's claims in the disputed waters. So basically, Marcos came out and essentially firmed up their claim around those islands, and then China basically, like you said, I think this is one of those kind of like coming over the top in a game of poker where, you know, you're basically saying that, hey, I know that guy doesn't have anything, so I'm going to push all in, and I bet he's going to fold on me.
Well, I guarantee you that if the Philippines didn't have the United States in their back pocket, they would have folded already.
Yeah, I think
100%.
That's right. This is just a classic case of the Chinese the Philippines came out and had the audacity to do something which took advantage of the 2016 ruling, right? So China's been told, you're out of your minds, go away, by the world, right? There is no legal foundation for Chinese possession of the South China Sea. This 2016 ruling was really clear the Philippines is in the right. What the Philippines did is it did the next step. It came out and it did the demarcation. The Chinese have to react because there's no way that they're going to let these little upstart southern, whatever they called them this week, rats, flies, monkeys, they call them everything. The Philippines is doing the right thing by nature of its territory and its sovereignty. let's see how the Chinese handle the fact that they've basically been told to go pound sand. What it really means inside of Beijing is it doesn't matter to them. They're going to do what they've been told to do. So the leadership in China is not going to give into this. But what they'll do is make it have cost. And it'll be a cost of engagement, because they can put thousands of these ships and these maritime militia ships out and make everybody's life miserable. And if you go back 2 or 3 years to our early talks, at some point they're going to start doing a stop and search on vessels. And when that begins, things in Taiwan will heat up. And Korea and Japan will get very, very, very fearful, because that'll impact logistics.
Just to clarify, if for those of you who don't understand because we really hasn't come right out and said it, I think it's worth saying. So what does this mean, right? So delimiting baselines basically is when a country redraws the baseline around a piece of claimed territory, right? So what does this mean, right? So if I say this island is mine and here are the geographic boundaries that I claim as my territory, then that has some legal implications, right? Because remember, in the international world, it is a world of anarchy. There is no international law. There are just agreements between countries that they decide to abide by. If China stops abiding by these agreements, then ultimately it doesn't matter. By the way, the one reason why the Philippines is different from almost any other country and or nation in this realm, to include places like Japan, maybe Japan too, but I can't remember, is that Philippines has a treaty obligation by the United States to come to their mutual defense, whereas really nobody else, like Taiwan, doesn't have that. Anyway, so the territorial sea for the baselines. So countries can claim a territorial sea up to 12 nautical miles. This is like saying basically the sea 12 nautical miles out from this point is mine, and you need my permission to even come in it. Then you've got contiguous zones, which extends 24 nautical miles from the baseline, where countries can enforce customs, immigration, sanitary laws, but it's not their sea, right? It's like that legal buffer around the territorial waters. And then you've got the exclusive economic zone, which stretches 200 nautical miles from the baseline, where the country has special rights regarding like exploitation of marine resources, fisheries, mining on the seabeds, and all kinds of other things within that 200. So there are some clear economic advantages to having these territorial claims and possessions, at least enforced by the countries involved, right? And so the big dog in the neighborhood is China, and like Joe and Jim both said, if it wasn't for the U.S., I don't know that we would be reading about this, because China would be, the Philippines would be China's bitch.
Yeah.
Well, they spoke Japanese at one point. They'd be speaking Chinese now.
I know.
Clark 45. So international law is kind of like Bitcoin. There's nothing there unless we all agree it's there. That's kind of the way international law works.
Well, the sad thing is there's so many things in this world that you think, Joe, it's like when somebody comes to your house and beats down your front door, you say, hey, that's illegal. You can't do that. And then they shoot you in the face, right?
Exactly right. These things are words on paper. And actually, on international law, they're not even words on paper. They're just customs and traditions. Point me to the international parliament, right, where these things are decided. Oh, there isn't one. You can say United Nations, but that's not
China
true.
used to sign up for all these multilateral organizations. And
right.
Their job would be to send 1,000 experts and swamp them, take them over, and drive them. This law of the sea, was it UNCLOS, whatever it was?
UNCLOS, yeah.
They screwed up on that one, because the judges looked at it and went, nah, really, the Philippines is clearly there. Then the Chinese threw their hands up and said, well, none of this abides to us, and we're going to do it our own way, and see you later, because you guys didn't decide about us. And remember, China for 30 years has been the belle of the ball of multilateral organizations, because in the mind of multilaterals, they want to get a hold of 1.4 billion people in population, and then wield that through whatever their little keyhole is, whether it be maritime or, hold your breath, environment, right? All of these groups love having the Chinese there because it gives them immediate credibility. Now it's giving them a sea anchor. because they're having to drag along and try to represent the global interests of the maritime nations. And now the Chinese have been saying that you're worthless. If you won't give us what we want, why would we bother with you? Here's the history. Here's the map. Hurry up, go draw the map, bring the map forward. Here's the map. This is what we know to be self-evident. So you got a country that really began in 1994 that is now trying to reset the whole paradigm of historical precedent, and nobody seems to be able to argue with them. They don't care to listen. So that's going to continue to be interesting, and just watch the bouncing mortadella loaves.
And if you think there is an international body of law that governs things at sea, learn about, one, the maritime security business, and two, learn about the maritime salvage business. Essentially, if I find anything in the ocean, it's mine now. Yeah. And I just take it to whatever port will pay me the most for it. So
now, in fairness, Joe, there are some so there are some exceptions to that, but not legal exceptions, but more of a might makes right exception. So, for instance, let's say you fished up an F-35 and then you took a picture of it, posted it to X, and then you started sailing your happy ass to China to sell it. I would imagine that some friendly American United States special operators would probably find their way to your location. But
more often than not, when United States Navy equipment is found at sea, a salvage company contacts the United States Navy, and the United States Navy buys it back.
Exactly right.
It does actually work that way.
Well, no, I'm saying you're talking about somebody who would actually preferentially.
Yes, but you know why they can kill you in the middle of the ocean? Because there's
no laws. Exactly right. Exactly. Like I said, it's a. Wait a second. There's a law against that.
Embry Maritime Security's entire business model relies on the fact that their ships never go into port anywhere. So
if you want to see, you want to play with international law and understand that it's not unprecedented for a sovereign country to do really goofy shit. Go back and look at what the French did to sink the Rainbow Warrior in New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
When the French were doing their nuclear testing in the South Pacific, and they found the Rainbow Warrior to be very irritating, and so a bunch of French guys went down to New Zealand and rented equipment, went and put limpet mines on the bottom of the Rainbow Warrior and sank it in the harbor. And then, as good low cost intelligence operatives, they went to try to return the equipment to get their deposit back, and the New Zealand police finally figured out that something was amiss. And so go look at the Rainbow Warrior being sunk in New Zealand, and you'll understand the countries do this crazy shit all the time out of pride and arrogance and whatever else it may be. And I'm not giving us a pass either. I am sure that at some point in time, the United States has done goofy stuff. I can't immediately think of things, but I know Dolio has like a list of 10 in his frontal lobe right now that he's not willing to vomit up. But USG does crazy shit.
All right. Hey, real quick, I want to, before we pause and go into our shameless commercial plug break, I want to make sure you guys are tracking. Stormy's got this DM group she's forming over on X for people who enjoy, who love the show. It'll be a place right now. I've got it open my other window. It is a veritable storm of spicy memes related to a lot of the stuff that we talk about, and I'm sure it will chill out a little bit once it develops, and it'll be a fun place to hang out. I think that these kind of like closeted groups are good because it allows people of like minds to just kind of like be able to comment without it being blast to the entire world. So now if it gets toxic, I'm out, right? But otherwise, I think it should be good. Stormy is a great moderator for us here on the channel. I'm sure she'll do a good job of cracking the whip over there too. So hit this link and message Stormy if you want to jump in and join the fun over there. Of course, you got to have an X account and all that kind of stuff. But hey, it's a small price to play in order to hang out with us in basically our chosen social media sphere. All right. Joe, before we go to talk about tactical-wisdom.com, so somebody has heard your criticisms of Tulsi Gabbard, because this piece of propaganda was created in order to try to chip away at the Joe Dolios of the world. I guarantee it.
You know, even as they talk about the fun.
Pause. I don't even want to hear what she has to say. Joe, what do you see there?
I see her rocking the tactical Bucky's patch. Although mine is of the subdued nature, it's not bright like that. So
now hers, the Bucky's has nods on it, which I appreciate. You know, I mean, she's clearly going for the Joe Dolio crowd. I mean, you know, I
don't know about all that.
I just think it's so funny.
It says Mario in the fall right on the tweet, but whatever.
Well, you know, I mean, whoever that's what because the fact that Mario's sharing it, go figure, right? But when I saw this, I immediately thought of you, and clearly she's you know,
that's funny. I had to give my son one this week when he was here. He saw mine. He was like, "Dude, I need that." I'm like, "Fine, take one."
Do they actually sell the Bucky's tactical patches at Bucky's?
Yes.
All right, I gotta get me one. All right,
you know what? Done. I will be at Bucky's sometime on Wednesday. I got you.
All right, brother.
I have to look
Let's
at the patches. What? Huh.
Hey, by the way, speaking of patches, I did see that our favorite, one of our favorite South Africans received a care package of patches. Care package of patches.
Yes, and yes, Gideon, and I'm going to take a break in a second and go get the patches that he has sent me in exchange. We had to work out a weird thing because you can't directly mail from the U.S. to South Africa without it taking like 47 weeks. So I mailed them to his aunt and uncle in Mississippi. His mom and dad went there for a visit, dropped off his patches, and picked up mine. So kind of cool.
Yeah. All right, Joe, tell us a little bit about what's going on with tactical-wisdom.com.
All right, so I wrote an article last night about some reminders for being prepared for the return of protest season. And I know we're going to be talking about it here in a few minutes on the show. It's very easy to kind of laugh them off and say, yeah, there's nothing to it. They're getting more and more crazy and violent. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I just threw up some reminders for people, so check that out, a new article there. The books are there, so get there and check out some books. We definitely need some books, man. Not a bad idea to get the books and learn from them. You want actual physical copies rather than electronic ones because you might not always have power. The class schedule is up there, but I'm working on next year's class schedule, so stay tuned. The classes that I know of for sure that are coming up is we have this weekend in Missouri. We're doing community security ops. On January, I believe it's the 16th, I'm going to do a one-day knife tactics class here because Kay is coming to Camp Ponderosa to do Ground Rod 2. And I thought if he's coming, we might as well throw another course up to tie with that so guys can come and get all kinds of training. And knives are something you can take with you everywhere, so pretty much everywhere. So it's a good skill to have. A quintessentially manly skill. Every man should have a skill with a knife. It's just basic. So we'll do an 8-hour knife class. And then in February, I'll be back down at Brushbeaters. I'm going to do a fieldcraft class just before he does the traditional wintertime scout and recce course. Because those skills mesh right into each other. Fieldcraft is really the precursor to the scout and recce course. So a lot of good things going on. And we'll keep pushing. So watch tactical-wisdom.com. Also sign up at tacticalwisdom.locals.com. A lot of my intelligence analysis and gear reviews go over there as a benefit to paid subscribers. And Suron, to answer that, we're going to get Gideon on pretty soon to actually talk about how things are going in South Africa. So he's had to lay low because of some political aspects in his country. Like where they put on the new currency, the massacre of the Boers. Yeah. But he's willing to come out and do some talking now. So
Joe, I mean, Gideon has a completely different. Gideon and Reaper are two kind of close buddies over there. We've got other contacts and friends over there as well, but they're the two that have been on the show, and they have a completely different focus. So it's been too long since we've had Gideon on, but you're right. He's had some reasons to lay low, but he can finally.
The issues are, Reaper's living out where it's already collapsed, and there's literally no law enforcement,
Right.
so he can say and do whatever he wants. Gideon's in the Cape where they can actually still reach out and get you. So he has to be a little careful. I'm going to take a couple seconds to go grab those patches. You guys want to carry on? I'm going to show the patches that Gideon sends us.
Jim, real quick, you were able to come on a little bit last week. It's been a while. What are some of the longer, so the election is really everything's thinking about right now, but what that does is it's the shiny object, but the rest of the world is still kind of powering on. Clearly China, we talked about that today. There's some stuff happening in the Middle East. Anything else in the world that you've seen that we haven't kind of mentioned lately, or maybe you're just not seeing anybody mention lately?
Well, yeah, the problem is our election has just been sucking the oxygen out of the media atmosphere. And what people don't want to talk about is kind of the fragmentation of economies in places like Latin America and Africa. So there's a lot of rebuilding that's going to be needed to keep what we describe as the BRICS economies from disconnecting from the West, right? And, China's been doing its best to disconnect them. Russia's been doing its best to disconnect them. And we've been subsidizing it by nature of the tariffing and sanctions regimen. We've been creating this alternative universe where if you can't use the dollar, okay, it'll be a little bit less efficient, but so what? Because we can still do what we want to do. So you just have to look at the oil that's been flowing illegally to China and India, and China and India don't care. They just buy oil. They want free oil, cheap oil, and so they're buying oil and coal from Russia, and they're buying sanctioned oil out of the Middle East. And the U.S. Treasury says, "Oh, that's terrible. It's bad. It's a violation." Nobody gives a shit what these people say anymore out there in bilateral land, right? So we need to start going out and negotiating. And instead of going to people and saying, hey, you'll make us really angry, what I call the Hans Blix school, we'll send you a nasty letter.
Yeah.
You're going to have to induce people to work with you. And you do that by creating a vibrant economy and beginning to do things for yourself that people want to buy from you. That's one of the things the United States has trouble with, is we've got to produce things that people want to buy from us. First and foremost, it used to be automobiles, but guess what? The distortion that Obama / Biden / Al Gore created, we almost put our auto businesses out of business with this electric vehicle nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So the Chinese have a centrally controlled economy. They can say, this is the car you get. Remember East Germany and the Trabant, right? It was a piece of shit, but people would line up for 2 years to get on the list to get the Trabi. If it's all you got, you'll do it. That's why China has taken well to the electric cars. We have individual liberties here in the United States. You can't mandate. And if you mandate, you must execute. And the Biden-Harris group failed to execute. Pete Buttigieg lied to us nonstop for 4 years. And the Al Gore kind of environmental stuff is clearly not interesting. So all of the DEI stuff that we were throwing at the world, all of the ESG stuff we were throwing at the world, really left us kind of adrift. So we need to get back to strategy, and we need to get back to economic engagement, and we need to do a lot of bilateral work, dynamic bilateralism with our key allies and trading partners. And a good example is going to be how Taiwan is handled, and the importance of Taiwan from a strategic standpoint, not just due to its proximity to China, but its ability to make semiconductors very efficiently. So TSMC needs to be taken care of somewhere in this strategic stack. And the CHIPS Act was not it. The CHIPS Act came after TSMC ended up in Arizona. Everybody wanted to give Biden credit for this. TSMC knows it has to come work in North America, and it's doing so. Our problem is we don't have enough engineers to support TSMC without allowing Taiwanese engineers to come here.
Without the dreaded H-1B visas that you would need to get
we really got to up our game on education. We got to reward our children for going to American schools and learning American science. I mean, the string of must-dos is massive.
Yeah, if I may add a few to that, in order to do that, you must basically tear down and then rebuild the entire secondary education system in the United States, as well as the accreditation service for making sure that those are actually educational services rather than indoctrination centers.
I think you were right, young man. It's gotten kind of ugly out there in public schoolville. I've met a couple of young people recently, some in DC and some in other places. And when you say, how'd you get here? They kind of shake their head and say, it was really touch and go going up through high school and being, in this case, a conservative person. I had to pretend I wasn't for a long time, and I couldn't speak in class, and yet I knew what I had to learn. And so what's going on is certain families are able to help their kids maintain an understanding that they're individuals and they're allowed individual thought. If you expect them to interact in class as conservative individuals, they will be eaten alive. And so that needs to be undone in our public schools. But hopefully that's underway. We'll see what happens. I remain ever hopeful.
By the way, I see you in the chat there, T-Pain, and hit me up on X. We need to figure out an opportunity to get some new Call of Duty action in maybe next weekend.
Listen, he's a great dude. I had a good time hanging out with him in person. And he was extolling the virtues of Washer and Scott on the Call of Duty. So he actually made me a pretty cool. He made me a pretty cool care package with some jalapeno cheese, some biscuits and gravy, some cookie bites, and all the good stuff we've talked about over the years. So that's a really good dude right there.
Yeah, when I was in Turkey, T-Pain, Watcher, and there was a crew of about like 6 or 7 of us that would get together on a fairly regular basis playing DMZ. That was a lot of fun. I get the feeling this new Call of Duty is not going to be DMZ fun, but hey, a new Call of Duty is always good for a couple months.
So these are the patches that we got from Gideon.
Oh, very cool.
And it looks like a really cool patch. The Protracted Operations Extraction Specialists, which in English it comes out to be pose, but in Afrikaans it's poes, which you can draw your own conclusions there. It's actually quite funny. So we have a few of these. Yes, T-Pain, in honor of our victory in the Great Biscuit and Gravy Wars of 2023. T-Pain, the little restaurant in that town that we were at for the class, the little tiny restaurant there, Tina's Place, had great biscuits and gravy. And I found some more out here in Montana. So good stuff.
Hey, send me your tag and I'll plug it in. I mean, I'm on at weird hours, but ultimately, like if I get on in the morning on say Saturday or Sunday, then it's nighttime your time. So anyway, I'm down to play with anybody who's on. All right, guys, let's jump right into our main topic of today. So we're talking about the Lunatic Fringe and their actions right now. We were worried that they would get really motivated by Trump, right? But the interesting thing is, Joe, is not only did the Steele effort clearly this kind of Watcher, were you the one that was talking about internal conflicts within the Democratic Party?
Yes, I've been saying for a long time that to view the left as a monolith is a giant mistake.
Well, here's the other thing. I think, we were talking about that from the standpoint of like, that was when we didn't know who was going to be their nominee and it was going to be maybe some real nasty infighting. But that quickly coalesced around Obama and his support. George Clooney and Obama's support for Kamala really kind of put paid to that, that debate. And Kamala was the heir apparent, right? But the funny thing is I think the internal conflict within the left is what essentially stalled out the Steele apparatus, specifically in Pennsylvania, but in other places around the country. I don't know. With the exception of Arizona, it didn't really seem that they got their, they really got into it. And I wonder, Joe, if that's also behind some of the indecisiveness that we're seeing with the direct action and protest operations that are going on. They seem disjointed. There's clearly not any kind of thrust the way we saw during the Summer of Love. Granted, we don't have the COVID lockdowns to help fuel them, but clearly, the bad man coming back, the orange man coming back, should scare the shit out of a lot of leftists.
Well, I think that it's going to. I think that, like I said before, that there's a little bit of shock going on. But if you don't think this still happened, look at down ballot voting. It's virtually impossible for someone to have voted for Donald Trump for president and a Democrat for senator, which is exactly what happened in Michigan. So the Elise Slotkin win should have you wondering what actually went on there.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the same thing with the Kerry Lake race.
Kerry Lake, exactly right.
Others, wherein the down ballot votes might be different. There may have been that there was just way too much popular outpouring for them to overcome. The Amish showing up was something literally no one anticipated because they've never done that before. And showing up in big numbers. Turnout everywhere I went was massive. And I think that there's just a little bit of shock, but they are going to go the other way completely. You cannot, and I know that Patriot Man, a couple of the others disagree with me on this, but you cannot spend all this time saying that the man is going to kill people and he's gonna instill martial law and he's gonna do this, that, and the other thing, and let him not do it, right? If you just shrug your shoulders and say, well, we'll get him next time, and he doesn't instill martial law, he doesn't mass deport everyone, he doesn't put everyone in camps or back in slavery like they said, you're exposed for the fraud that you are. They're not going to let that happen. They're going to amp things up, and they're going to do something to protect that position of theirs.
Well, it's like Occupy Wall Street, Acorn, BLM. It's like all that garbage that we dealt with. They'll do trial balloon till it takes, and then if they can get the money necessary, they'll put the Marxist movement out in the streets. And I don't think they really care who they target because they're happy just being anarchists, right? Yeah. The folks out in Seattle and Portland are kind of just the tell, but they've got a nationwide network in all the major blue cities. So, and I think the part that's just really obscene is the DOJ / Homeland Security obsession with the single white radical male.
Yeah.
Alt-right. Remember, they tried every possible moniker. Oh my God, the neo-Nazis are going to come and kill everyone. I haven't seen a viable threat from a neo-Nazi that was not surrounded by DOJ agents. Okay. And it must be horribly embarrassing in DC for all of these guys who tried to create this threat, nurture this threat, drive this threat. Those guys need to find a new job, right? They need to go to OPM and start doing backgrounds on the hundreds of people that are going to need TSSCI clearances because we're throwing all the old guys out. They're untrustworthy. The folks inside the Beltway have proven themselves unacceptable, right? So something has got to give. You cannot keep trying to vilify a segment of the society for 20 years and then fail miserably, as Joe said, have nothing to show for it. And then you're found out that the data that you used is all false, right? And what's funny is the under 30 crowd who's been fed this garbage their whole modern life. We're smart enough to look at it and say, we don't agree. But the interesting thing is we're going to lie because we know socially we can't put ourselves at risk. But when we're 18 and we get to go vote, we're going to go vote for this Trump guy because he just makes more sense than these blithering idiots in DC. DC is apoplectic right now. And if you look at some of the interviews of the barren cat women, as a good example, it's tragic. These people are losing their shit because they believe this, but they live in a bubble that is so small and they never go outside their bubble intellectually. They would never talk to a guy like Joe unless he was sent to be their security man, right? They would never see it. And now the world is laid bare, and they're going to have to sort that out. And they tried to vilify us for not being like them. Had nothing to do with what our opinions were, positions were. They attacked us nonstop for 6 years. And we are not evil. We are not dangerous. We are actually fairly good citizens. Yeah, there they are. If you want to drop a mortadella bomb, that's where you put the mortadella.
Listen, as the Italian American in this chat, I have to insist we stop making fun of the mortadella. You're mortifying my mother over the mortadella.
I don't think most Americans understand how big mortadella is, though. That's what I was trying to convey. It's not salami slicing. It's a freaking loaf of mortadella.
Oh yeah.
And they bounce.
So, you know who else shaved their head when things didn't go their way? Charles Manson's women. I'm just
yeah, exactly.
Well, hold on. Don't preempt the second story here.
Squeaky from.
Well, actually, you know what, Scott, that's a great transition. Can we cover number 2 first, then, since we're talking about?
Yeah, let's jump right into it. Yeah, let's do it. So, women furious about Trump's women start Matka movement, which glorifies poisoning men. Hold on a second. Yeah, this is interesting. So this is a New York Post article that's part of this. It says women online have been taken to filming ghoulish murder fantasy videos in which they romanticize lacing beverages with deadly poisons as a justifiable response to the fears about abortion rights under the second Donald Trump presidency. Many of the videos have been viewed millions of times on X or TikTok and feature young women fiendishly grinning as they adulterate a cup of tea or drink with an unknown substance. Some of the women have been dubbed in the videos taking part in the Make Aqua Tofane Great Again movement, a nod to both towards President-elect Trump's campaign slogan and an ancient killer, Julia Tofane, who adopted as the group's disturbed heroine.
Tofane, but okay.
Tofane.
Yeah, she murdered over 600.
It's always women like this who don't have to worry about abortions who are the most worried about abortions.
Yeah, the woman that they're picturing and glorifying there, the one in this she murdered over 600 men accused of abusing their wives in ancient Greece.
Well, she taught women how to do it, and they all.
Yeah, right. She's kind of like the Margaret Sanger of killing your husbands. Essentially, basically, it says here she sold poison to wives who wished to dispatch their abusive husbands, resulting in the deaths of more than 600 men. Now, this is back in the 1600s.
So this is actually, here's the thing. I know they're all doing this just for social media clout. They're not actually poisoning their husbands or whatever. But this goes to that mindset. And now if something ever happens to their husbands, these morons have all handed the court an easy conviction because they bragged about it ahead of time. And look, there was no one who was about to be putting her at risk of a pregnancy. So
yeah, anybody who goes near people who look like this, yeah. Note the hair color. That's a sign from nature that you don't go there.
Yeah, if only they were distinguishing themselves somehow in a way that you could say, I probably shouldn't eat at this restaurant.
Hey, you in the chat, I just want to let you know, Julia Tofana is the correct pronunciation of that name. I'm just saying.
Boys, I need to excuse myself and head off. I just wanted to
Jim,
say
thanks
hi.
for being here, brother.
I wanted to say hi to Rick. Good morning, Rick. And I hope all is well out there. And stay frosty, work hard, take care of your peeps.
But you didn't say Julia Tofana. You said Julia Tofane. So
yeah, that's because I wasn't looking at the. I know.
It's all Greek.
I wasn't looking at it when I said that. It's kind of like I had misspelled it in my head, you know. Hunch of Dirty
Jim. Chat. Greetings, Cannon.
Jim, thank you for being here, brother. We appreciate you. Anything the folks should be looking for, kind of that's in your lane in the near future?
I just keep an eye on China. Don't buy things that are made there unless you have to, and don't buy a piece of garbage car just because it's the only piece of garbage car available to you. Go look around.
Amen.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jim, let me know the next time you come this way, by the way, so I can adjust my schedule.
I will. We'll come down and we can go to the your favorite Hungry Bear.
Right on.
All right. Be good, guys.
All right, we'll see
Take
you.
care, brother. Hunt's the dirty
For the record,
Roofer
I found us
for
a place way better than the A-Bar, Scott. That's what he was just talking about. So
Oh, is that the place you were talking about buying?
no, that's another place that Hunch saw on the road. He's like, I'm buying
that's
that place one day.
That's a place that's closed down right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's closed down, but there's another one south of here that's pretty nice. So.
Yeah, the A-Bar was not bad, but it just needs to be a little closer.
A-Bar is good when it's the only thing around.
Right.
And if they would just take credit cards, their business would explode. But
Yeah, that's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. It's more of
Hunt's
a
dirty
freedom
Roofer.
thing in Montana. Everybody likes to take cash here. So
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of cash, but credit cards from time to time. I mean, sometimes you don't have cash. I mean,
especially when you're at a bar, because sometimes you don't think about what's in your pocket when you place an order, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, when you're living off of tips, getting cash is always better.
Yeah.
Hunch Dirty Roofer for $5 says when they don't get their way, they want to make all of us suffer. Can someone explain to me why did we start letting them vote again? I think you're talking about an entire 52% of the population, right, Hunch?
Let me point out that all the women who said, I'm not having sex with conservative men because Donald Trump was elected, that was yet again another benefit of electing Donald Trump. And it's also very easy to say something like that when it wasn't going to happen anyway.
Our good buddy Jim Satala in the chat lets me know that the feminazis, who are some of the people who are probably taking part in this poisoning campaign, and the Groypers, another group of confused homosexuals, is absolutely going at it with each other. So I guess one of these crazy purple-haired land whales attempted to break into Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, yeah. So a transgendered individual decided it would be a great idea. They claim they knocked. Fuentes claims they were trying to pick his lock, or rather hasn't made a statement, but you can infer that. So he opened the door and pepper sprayed them.
Hey, Cannon, we need to get you back in here whenever you have the opportunity to. I know you're going to go live here in a bit. So if we're too spicy for you, go hang out with Cannon. Maybe check out Cannon when we're done here. Watcher, do you know how to do the whole kind of send our people to him? I don't know how to do that.
We can do it manually, but no, I should invest some time to learn how their internal system
I know it's
works.
it's a YouTube function, I think, and you have to do it in YouTube. So I don't know. Anyway, Cannon, definitely, brother, we need to get you back in here, and we'll send folks over to you as long as you're live when we turn off here in about an hour. Anyway, this Nick Fuentes thing, I think it's so funny. I am not a fan of Nick Fuentes.
Same.
I mean, I don't hate on him. I just think he's pathetic, and he's most likely a homosexual. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but
he is clearly a leftist plant to be over the top and make right-wing people look bad. When you look at all of his foundation is the same as the Patriot Front. When you peel back the layers, and Richard Spencer's group, once you peel back the layers and read what they actually stand for, they're socialists.
They're leftists. Yeah, they're leftists. They're leftists that are angry at the left because the left was mean to them.
And what's funny is everyone said, "Oh, all the right wingers are saying your body, my choice." And when you break it down, it was Nick Fuentes who said it, and I'm like, so no one right wing actually said it.
So here's my thought, right? Because one of the things that I realized when I was like 20, right, was that I wanted to be able to say what I had to say, but I knew that I wasn't very wise. Like I knew enough to know that I didn't really know what the fuck I was talking about, right? And so I tried to surround myself with older people, hang out with older people who had a better grasp on what was going on in the world than I did. But what I don't like are these young men who like come out. It's like bursting from the womb, saying, "Everybody, listen to me, follow me. I know what to do." Bullshit.
Yep.
You don't know shit from Shinola. There's a reason why, like, the follies of youth, right? All the young people that I respect and listen to are the ones that I also see surrounding themselves with older people who are trying to synthesize the wisdom and thoughts and ideas of older people for a younger audience, right?
What's the funny thing though, Scott? I was just thinking about this the other day. That is an almost impossible lesson to teach without personal experience.
It's totally.
The dumb young kids just kind of have to be dumb young kids.
Well, it's one of those it's like some people have an innate understanding that it's like I'm not nearly as smart as I think I am, and so people who have that tend to go a better route,
Fair.
And some people don't, and like they continue to be 40-year-old men that they still have no idea, what the hell is going on in the world. All right, gentlemen, let's go on to our next story here. So let's do. Okay, so we just had the women poisoning men. Let's go to the male version of that real quick.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then we'll go, and then we'll do that FEMA one there last. All right. So when women do it, it's a kind of a murder fantasy on social media that never really amounts to much. But when
and it's always
far left
targeted,
men do it,
yeah, it's always targeted at right-wing men too. Maybe, ladies, you should look a little closer to home.
Well, yeah. So the actual men that are generally threatening are generally. So let's be honest. Male feminists tend to be predatory type of people. That's like they try to ingratiate themselves to left-wing women, so they could then take advantage of them. And so this is an absolutely gut-wrenching story. This is a man who is obviously mentally deranged, and he killed himself and his wife and 2 sons over the victory of Donald Trump. I mean, that's it. So it was a murder-suicide type of deal, so in here the end wokeness says the media is driving people insane. I don't think it's just the media, right? I think specifically it's this kind of this amazing information bubble that people put themselves in. We always talk about, like, when people are talking about misinformation and disinformation, it's usually the purveyors of misinformation and disinformation that are doing this. And so that's kind of where I'm at with this. I mean, I think that mentally ill people can't handle this type of information environment. I mean, what do you guys think?
I need you to understand this too. If they're willing to kill the people they love the most, they will not bat an eye about killing you.
Yeah.
It's one of the basic tenets of law enforcement. Suicide calls are the worst because that person doesn't care about themselves. They sure don't care about you. So you have to really think about that, right? If they're willing to go to this length and kill their children and wife and everything, they will kill you in a heartbeat.
So when asked, hey, what's the sourcing on about Trump wins, and In Woke just shares a clip from New York Times, or not, the New York Post says, also appeared increasingly concerned about the prospect of a Trump-led government. My mental health and the world can no longer, this is a quote from that guy, my mental health and world can no longer peacefully coexist, and a lot of the reason is religion. He said in July, I'm terrified of religious zealots inflicting their misguided beliefs on me and my family. I have intrusive thoughts of being burned at the stake as a witch or crucified on a burning cross. Gentlemen.
Why?
Okay, let me propose a why. Let me tie in what Scott just said and say something that I've been hinting at for a while, but let me propose that the modern information environment did not get this way as an accident, that it is a targeted weapon, and that these people are the specific targets. There may be some instances where they are misfiring and going off in directions that are unhelpful, but I believe this is exactly what is being engineered from multiple different angles. I bet this guy has a very active TikTok account, or had, I should say. They tend to disappear those faster than even the Facebook pages. I guarantee that if you look into some of those groups, not all of the behavior is, shall we say, human generated. In fact, I would argue that a vast majority of it would be non-human generated, and that non-human generated content looks like it comes from humans, and that if you're mentally ill and not looking into shit and just kind of wanting a friend base, that you're very vulnerable and don't really question things, right? So I am saying that they are doing this on purpose.
One of the things this is the kind of thing. So I want to give this example. I'm going to share something that was just put into our newly formed DM chat by Stormy. If you're over there, then you would have already seen this one. But I think this is a great example of the kind of the double standard that's been created in mainstream media society and the PC political culture that is completely invested itself in the United States since the 90s. What we have here are tire tracks across the Pride banner that's put on the road where tire tracks would normally be. And this becomes a hate crime. But yet this is considered not a hate crime. This is the Tennessee shooter who killed several children at a Christian school or Christian daycare? This is the kind of thing that creates those types of people. And
Look,
I like you said, we're just lucky that he didn't turn the weapon on society at large.
she did.
Oh, she did.
No,
He's
no,
talking
I'm
about
talking
we're
about
lucky that the
family.
the
All right,
initial
so
story.
The thing I want to point out something I do. Put that picture back up. That I do every time this photo shows up. Social media has been a saving grace for us in terms of these false flag attacks, because I guarantee you, this person was wearing the red hat and had the rifle and all the tactical gear and the camouflage pants because they were going to tell you that it was something other than what it was.
Yeah.
The red hat meant one thing, right? They were going to tell you this was a crazed Trump supporter who did this. But the biggest indicator for us is the fact that the person put a sling on their rifle and then did not use it and is using that rifle as if they have never used a rifle in their life. Look at where the stock position is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So absolutely crazy.
Yeah, these people are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and it's almost a direct result of their fascination and just complete immersion in the neo-Marxist bubble. Derner for $5 says, if you do not accept that there is an irrational element to morality that can only be grounded in faith, and everything you believe becomes religion. Yeah, no, I think that's true.
This is literally a conversation that ended a relationship with a family member probably 15 years ago at this point, where I said that it is religion, for whatever reason, in the human mind is part of the hierarchy of needs. It is one of the baser things. If you don't have it in one form, you will replace it with something else. There's no getting rid of it.
The LGBTQ agenda becomes a religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and it's the founding fathers commented that essentially that even our kind of system of government is only suitable for a people of morality and faith.
Morality, absolutely. There's a $5 from Pinochet up there
on Rumble.
Yeah,
is it on
Peter
Rumble?
Shane's helicopter. Yeah, it's on Rumble. Peter Shane's helicopter for $5 says, gentlemen, hypothetically, if the top 25 big money donors to a senator, corporate, or otherwise spontaneously combust, or their heads exploded, would that change or encourage the senator's voting habits?
I think it would change it, and we will leave any speculation as to why this would happen to whomstever.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, weaponized information platform. That's why they're so angry that they no longer have full algorithmic control, because that's a part of it.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our final story in the Lunatic Fringe acts. You know, from going from radical leftist family men to FEMA officials who decide to target Trump voters in their unequal application of aid. FEMA officials were moved after Avoid Trump houses message leaks DeSantis orders investigation. An official with the FEMA was removed for their role and is under investigation after the Daily Wire obtained a leaked internal message in which they ordered workers to bypass the homes of Trump supporters as they surveyed the damage caused by Hurricane Milton in Florida. Now, the interesting thing is that even though they're on federal duty down there doing this affects Florida residents, and therefore it is in potentially a Florida jurisdiction to be able to go after these folks. But I don't know, isn't there some sort of a kind of a precedent or a supremacy clause type thing that protects federal workers against state prosecution?
Qualified immunity is the same deal. They're going to say it's under color of our job that we did this, but the only law that actually would apply though to them withholding any sort of benefit or aid in a federal program would be a federal law. So DeSantis can order an investigation, but I don't know that he can do anything about it. I'd love to see him be able to, but I don't think he can. She's going to claim that this was for safety reasons, but it's going to be absolutely ridiculous. What's funny is when I first shared this story yesterday, a whole bunch of people told me, well, where's the real source? This all looks made up. And then FEMA said, oh, no, this is actually real. This did happen.
Yeah. Yeah, the leaked message, a FEMA supervisor told workers to avoid homes advertising Trump as they canvassed Lake Placid, Florida, to find residents who may qualify for federal aid. The supervisor Marnie Washington told workers both verbally and in a group chat to avoid Trump supporters, multiple government officials told the Daily Wire. When we got there, we were told to discriminate against people. It's unbelievable to think that somebody in the federal government would think that's okay, one of the employees told the outlet, adding that it was wrong to discriminate against Trump supporters when they are the most vulnerable, and when they are at their most vulnerable. He says, I volunteered to help disaster victims, not discriminate against them, the employee said. It didn't matter if people are black, white, Hispanic, Trump, for Trump or for Harris, everyone deserves the same amount of help, which is exactly correct. That's the exact same. You have to be completely blind when it comes to the application of either aid or justice, right? The guidance came as Biden administration was criticized for a sluggish response to Hurricane Helene in rural areas across the country. In Roan Mountain, Tennessee, for example, locals told the Daily Wire it took nearly 2 weeks for FEMA to show up. The town is located in Carter County, which voted 81% for Trump on Tuesday. The FEMA agents ordered not to help houses with Trump signs were operating in Highlands County, a deep red area located in south central Florida that backed Trump by 70%. It was hit with tornadoes, torrential rain, and flooding when Milton hit. I mean, I can't say that this surprises me, guys.
No.
It's just, it doesn't surprise me one bit. It just confirms that they've declared a war against you and have been fighting it for some time.
And then a later tweet here, the Daily Wire says, update, FEMA confirms the incident, which is exactly what you were saying, Joe, saying it is deeply disturbed by this employee's actions, horrified that it took place, and that taken extreme actions to correct this situation.
No, they're horrified that word of it
got caught.
Yeah, exactly right.
We got somebody would leak their internal messaging.
Yeah, and the irony is that I can't believe this person just kind of took it on themselves to do this. Clearly, there's somebody above them had probably articulated something in a maybe a less traceable manner. You know, it's at the level where the midwits take over that this type of error starts becoming prevalent.
Other safety advice in there is also garbage, because coconut water is not a great source of electrolytes. Shut up, lady. Anyway,
let's see. Anyway, I thought this was just kind of nuts. That it doesn't surprise me at all.
it
But
also
it's
matches
just
the other story that we talked about briefly of FEMA saying that if you attempt to leave the camps and you don't have a permanent home for the children to go to,
yeah,
your children have to stay in the camp and you can go.
right.
It's absolutely ludicrous. Hey, this guy wrote a book called Tactical Wisdom, Volume 1, where he said never ever go into the camps voluntarily because of the conditions they will impose upon you to ever leave again. And this is
Yeah, I mean,
it's true.
As soon as you give control of your liberty to an outside agency, you start to become a resource for them,
Being
and that
self-sufficient solves this. Yeah.
right. Yeah, you don't leave a female with.
You don't have a female without the FEMA. Funny.
All right, guys. I just want to let you know that this DM. I'm looking over at the DM chat, and it is absolutely on fire.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Let's move to our second topic today, which is the Trump transition. It's been really interesting watching, a lot of, over the weekend, I get the feeling that the Trump transition continued moving, but a lot of the information space, the social media folks kind of don't work as much on the weekend, and that's understandable. A lot less live streams and that kind of thing. So information was just kind of trickling out, mostly on X, oddly enough. By the way, if you're not on X, you're literally missing the news source. You see the news from both sides on there, and the news that's trustworthy and good gets upvoted and everybody sees it. The stuff that basically is garbage gets community noted and disappears within 24 hours. Once again, we are looking at X for a lot of what we're seeing here. This is one that was shared with me right before the show, but I think this is good because it sets up our next bit of the story here. 2-week Tren de Aragua tracking update, starting where we left off on October 7th. So this is as of November 10th. This is Aurora, Colorado. TDA members have a control over the apartments. This is not being mentioned in the news. Colorado residents are still reporting this. TDA harassing fire department and EMS during emergency calls to TDA-controlled apartments. TDA and migrant gangs are now targeting middle-class and high-end homes around Denver area, including Boulder, Colorado. God love Colorado. They want to be blue as the day is long. Then they can have the police policies that will allow this to happen to wealthy subdivisions and whatnot. TDA suspected of renting an Airbnb and causing $16,000 in damages. Then let's see, 2 TDA gang members arrested in Aurora for capital murder, one in New Mexico, and 1 gang member is still at large. The case had a large law enforcement investigation that spanned Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and New Mexico. Hey, Joe, is that gang really just kind of mostly situated west of the Mississippi?
Yeah, they're Venezuelans, and they're kind of on a corridor line, straight up I-15 from the border all the way up into Bozeman, Montana. So they are all over, but pretty much in a straight line north to south along I-15.
Excuse me. A lot of people, I've been critical of Colorado. It's such a beautiful state, but there's still some fairly based areas. Like Colorado Springs is still very conservative. They went for Trump. That district went for Trump this election. As was Pueblo is pretty based as well. But yeah, Denver, and the weird thing is going out to Boulder, and then a lot of the rural counties to the west of Denver broke for Harris, which I don't know, man. I don't quite get it. In Chicago, suspected TDA member had been arrested 13 times. Wow. trying to rob a woman of her bike. So clearly he doesn't. He's a misogynist. So TDA are misogynist. Does that help you go after him? Large street brawl between Venezuelans and Chicago erupts. Venezuelans versus Chicago. I like that idea, Joe. That can't go wrong in Chicago. In Texas, you've got pink cocaine or tussy warning from San Antonio police. A large sex trafficking ring was found in northeastern San Antonio area, previously reported by firefighters union to have TDA members in the community. So just remember, this is all TDA related crimes. TDA related in New York City, TDA related crimes have racked up 517 arrests since the beginning of the year. 2 TDA members arrested in New York State. 6 Venezuelans arrested for ATM jackpotting scheme. Let's see. TDA has a big party, about 200 plus participants seen in video. In the middle of the video, it's Aragua can be seen. So it just goes on and on and on. Florida, Vermont, Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico. So these people are everywhere. It's almost like we need a special kind of tool or a special kind of, law enforcement type person to get us through this. Let's go to the next story because this is kind of the shot, and then now the next story is
let me mention something about Tren de Aragua that Michael asked in the chat. Sounds like a distribution channel. So that's how these gangs all work. They work as like the security contractor for the cartels. If you notice, MS-13 is based heavily from the southwest going up to the northeast corridor, right? Chicago and east. Tren de Aragua was in the middle, and MA-13, which is a Mexican gang, covers the far west. They each have their own jurisdiction and their own channels to protect, to guard the shipments. So,
although I have heard that TDA is not following standard agreements and is trying to edge everybody else out as well. So,
it's kind of how gangs work, right? It's like it is exactly like the contracting business. Hey, I could do a better job. Let me take over this area, but you have to hold it by force. So.
Not to be pedantic, but was that M18? Is that the gang that you're mentioning?
Yeah, 18, not 13.
All right. I thought maybe the 3 and the 8.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, MS-13 and M18 are literally rival El Salvadoran gangs from LA that essentially became these global transnational criminal organizations. So it's kind of ironic. The 18th means it's literally the 18th Street gang is what that stands for. All right. So for tough cross-border threats like this, you need the right kind of guy, and I think Trump has figured out who the right guy is for this. Trump taps former ICE director Tom Homan as border czar. He says, I'm pleased to announce the former ICE director and stalwart border control, Todd Holman, will be joining the Trump administration in charge of the national borders, including but not limited to. Let's just go down to the graphic right below this because it's an actual screenshot of the post there. Yeah. Let's see, including but not limited to the southern border, the northern border, all maritime and aviation security. I've known Tom for a long time, and there's nobody better at policing and controlling our borders. Likewise, Tom Homan will be in charge of the deportation of illegal aliens back to their country of origin. Congratulations to Tom. I have no doubt he will do a fantastic and long way. I tell you what, some of the best moments on Capitol Hill during testimony has been by this guy. He has absolutely annihilated the left on this issue. I mean, this is what happens when you have somebody who's tough and knows their business, goes before these clowns in Congress.
So I'm going to make one of my silly stands on virtue and principle here, and I'll probably get called condescending by someone in the chat. But I'm happy with this appointment. However, I'm not happy with using the border czar position. We objected to it when Barack Obama first created all these czars because it's an end around the Constitution, right? It is a way to get people approved or get people into a position without going through Senate approval. And we shouldn't be encouraging that. He should appoint him as the director of the DHS rather than as the border czar.
Yeah, that's a good point. The irony is that if I think I can accept it if at the same time he uses whatever powers he has to whisper in Trump's ear to make the TSA become to privatize that and let that become a contract type situation. And also potentially, if he shuts the lights off on the Department of Homeland Security, I'd be okay with that too.
Pretty much, if it's not in the Constitution, we don't need to be doing it.
Yeah, exactly right. The whole idea with that, the TSA is one of those organizations that never should exist. Each of those airports should be contracting their own security. All the federal government should do is give the interstate kind of piece of security. If you're going to be traveling across state, by airplane, then you have to have these standards, and it's up to each airport and to handle that.
And I believe we have a word from the man himself here briefly.
Let's
as part of a 60 Minutes interview.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is it worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
We have seen one.
I mean, I just love his delivery. There's something about a plain speaker, right? That somebody that is just willing to give their opinion and not give a fuck about, the incredulous. Let's give a listen. There's another tweet here that's got his speech from I think this is the RNC. Let's give a listen to what he said at the RNC. Is this? It's just a minute.
I got a message. As a guy who spent 34 years deporting illegal aliens, I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now. You're damn right. Because you're going home. I got another message. Another message to the criminal cartels in Mexico. You smuggled enough fentanyl across this country to kill 148,000 young Americans. You have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. And that's when President Trump gets back in office. He's going to designate you a terrorist organization, and he's going to wipe you off the face of the earth. You're done. You're done.
I mean, Joe, that's kind of sounds like he's calling for the same thing that we've called for almost.
Yeah, but the problem is going to be the rank and file immigration employees, not Border Patrol. Border Patrol is very, very strong on this. And until you replace the immigration judges, you can't do anything. So.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to discover if this is the same. I think go to the next link underneath this one because this is a I thought I had the Colin Rugg on X. That's the fourth link under segment 2. Go to that one. Because that has the video of him sparring with AOC, which is delightful. Anytime we can make her look stupid, I think is if she makes herself look stupid. We just highlight.
Presented. The third included the option for family separation. This initiative would pursue prosecution of all amenable adults, including those presenting with a family unit. Mr. Holman, your name is on this. Is this correct?
Yes, I signed that memo.
So you are the author of the family separation
I
policy.
am not the author of this memo.
You're not the author, but you signed the memo.
Yes, a zero tolerance memo.
So you provided the official recommendation to Secretary Nielsen on for the United States to pursue family separation.
I gave Secretary Nielsen numerous recommendations on how to secure the border and save lives.
But it says here that you gave her numerous options, but the recommendation was option 3, family separation.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the Secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation,
I recommend a zero tolerance.
which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Holman, with
family.
all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum and go through the port of entry, do it the legal way.
I've been saying this for years.
Exactly.
Clear.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the memo is 3 different.
So, but that's a very basic legal point. I can't seek asylum by avoiding your authorities, right?
Yeah.
The only person I can get asylum from is an immigration officer, not a border patrol agent, an immigration agent. So I can't just walk in and be like, hey, I'm declaring asylum by sneaking in. You have to actually present yourself somewhere and ask for it. And really, the place to actually apply for asylum is at the consulate in your home country.
Yes.
In all honesty, if you qualify for asylum, we will then help you get there and you won't have to risk your life. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just one of those kind of things, Joe. I mean, when you actually follow the laws, it's kind of like the whole gun control thing, right? Almost all the laws you need to limit people's freedoms of firearms actually already exist, right? You just have to enforce the laws that you already have. But ultimately, you know, in the case of firearms, you have too many laws. But when it comes to the border, you've got a lot of the right laws in place. You just have to actually enforce them. And some of this stuff is policy, you know, like regulatory policy or executive order. And, you know, and when you get rid of effective rules and regulations at the border, then you just have an anarchy situation, which is what it is right now.
I'm sorry, I was reading the comment here by Michael. Nobody sneaks into the country out of ignorance. I'm sorry. There's like a whole line and a fence and everything. I don't accidentally sneak in. I don't understand.
I want to catch up on some super chats here. Peter says helicopter tours for $2 says, I think when they bounced Biden actually short circuited a portion of the steel, threatened to reveal. Yeah, you know, there's, like I said, I think the steel operation was a complex operation that had many different kind of functionaries that affected it. And when one side of the Democratic Party got pissed off about this, so that might not have got activated. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I mean, I don't know.
In Michigan, the boxes still showed up at 3 a.m., but it wasn't enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And this goes back to the whole idea, beat the steel type thing. If you've got big enough margins, then ultimately the steel operation can only do so much. But in Arizona, it looks like it's pretty effective. I think it was in Michigan too. The senator looks pretty. It would have been pretty close. And if I can't remember all the states. I think it was Michigan, or no, is it Nevada? I can't. Anyway. Let me go down. Penis says helicopter tours for $5. Gentlemen, hypothetical. Okay, yeah, we already read that one.
However,
okay.
there is a member 1 month member chat.
Let me get through Rumble first, and then I'll go over to that. Analyst Penis says helicopter tours for $5. Sean Ryan had someone on his show saying FEMA was doing this in North Carolina. A day later, Sean made a video saying he was contacted by FEMA, and the North Carolina info was wrong. was true all along. Sean looks silly now. Well, the interesting thing is if you're talking about the past the Trump people's house buy, FEMA has said that it's correct, and it happened in Florida. It wasn't happening in North Carolina.
Well, but it could have been happening. What I think.
Oh, it could have. It just we don't have any proof that it happened.
Yeah.
Pinochet's helicopter tours for $2 says also MA is part of a government alliance threatening secession. Need I remind the government she disarmed MA? Elites in MA will reap the whirlwind of total war insurgency if they try.
Well, it's like California, and I know a lot of people are like, yeah, let them have California. No. Here's exactly how this would go. January 25th, Gavin Newsom announces that they're now sovereign territory. Shortly, sometime after lunch in the afternoon, U.S. Marines from Camp Pendleton storm the governor's office, rendition the governor to Guantanamo Bay. Order restored.
Yeah. All right, let me get the one over here on YouTube here. We've got Ammo's Currency, member for 1 month. They promoted family separation during COVID over vaccines. And yeah, it's ironic how it's a completely valid tool when they are the ones that justify its usage.
Well, and they're even now saying that, hey, if the parents are Christians, it might be worth taking the children away from them. So it's getting crazy.
Let's see. Did I miss any more over here? Yeah, I think I got all the other ones here. Wait a second. Did I miss this one? I don't think I got this one. Derna for $5 says Europeans like to pretend it's the Delian League. Why not just make it the Delian League? You don't have to have a military. Just pay us. Yeah, they're talking about the NATO situation over there.
Facts, Derna. I've been saying that for a long time.
All
if
right.
everybody wants it, they can pay for it.
All right, let's move on. Let's see. Let's look at this Dave Smith one. The zero hedge. Some interesting stuff going on with, one of the biggest things we were worried about, and we were like, hey, listen, the last time around, he was surrounded himself by a bunch of neocons. So he can make all the promises in the world, but if he surrounds himself with people like that, then ultimately, can you really trust what he's going to do? Can you trust the policies, right? Well, there has been a concerted effort to, by several people in his orbit, right? And I guess we were talking about this the other day, Joe, that there may be some blessings to him not being president for 4 years, because during that 4 years he was out of office, all the knives came out, all the backstabbing occurred. He saw who his friends were. He saw what they're willing to support from the Biden administration, so he could see their true colors, right? So now he has absolute records of people from the swamp who now want to cozy up to him. And then you've also had people who were with him during his 4 years in the desert, right? People like Don Jr., who have been there with him, the whole way. Now, granted, he's family, but still, he's been a very consistent supporter for, the MAGA, America First, kind of populist nationalism type, policies and people. And he says, 100% I'm on it. Don Jr. tells Dave Smith he'll block neocons and warhawks from the administration. And so to that end, we saw Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley were told that they would not be part of the administration. This is the great thing about X, right? You have literally if you just go down a little further, you've got the Dave Smith tweet that Donald Trump Jr. responded to. So Dave Smith says, stop Pompeo movement is great, but it's not enough. Right now, we need the maximum pressure to keep all neocons and warhawks out of the Trump administration. They've had their at the table and brought nothing but disaster to the world and country. And then Donald Trump Jr. Basically reposts him and quotes him. He says, agreed, 100%, I'm on this. And then we've got a post above this one talking about Trump eyeing Representative Mike Rogers to lead DOD sources familiar. Trump team moles lawyer Richard Farley for sec chair. Sean Davis above it says, absolutely not. Mike Rogers is a CIA-owned deep state clown who could not care less about putting America first. He will stab Trump and all his supporters in the back. So I've been seeing this. And then the other big one that we've seen is the race for the Senate leader, which, Joe, this is the height of just absolute chicanery, backroom dealing, a secret vote before Trump is inaugurated in order to kind of slide in people who would potentially support a more moderate neocon style governance model. And so, you've got Thune. What is it? Who are the three senators that are kind of up for it? It's Thune. Hold on a second. Ursula Theodoros for $20. Gosh, that is a big donation. Thank you very much. Good morning, CFC. Voted in person, zeroed glass, and IR laser. Back to northern swamps from the high desert for a bit longer, 73.
Hey, Doc, I got the same laser. That's on my that is on my to-do list today. Does this mean you said high desert? Oh, you're not in Idaho anymore. Okay, never mind. I'll say stop by, but if you're not in the area, then don't.
Right.
Mm.
Anyway, so we've got
again, the entire Senate leader thing is an end around the Constitution one more time, because the vice president is the president of the Senate. We don't need any other leader, right? So troubles. Just
yeah, I mean, I think the real what is it, Joe? The Senate majority leader is the one who kind of controls the agenda from the
Senate, but it actually is supposed to be the vice president who does that. The vice president should only get a vote when it's a tie, but he is supposed to run the Senate.
So I mean, I felt like this is one of those issues based on, coming out and saying Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo will not be in the Trump administration. I feel like the transition team is on the right path. The people with big megaphones at Mar-a-Lago right now, like Elon Musk, Tucker, are very much invigorated on this. If you look on X, you can't kind of go anywhere on X today without seeing somebody saying, Rick Scott for Senate Majority Leader. There's already rumors that some of the people who've been called out for supporting either Thune or what's the other guy, Cornyn, right? Have said, no, I'm supporting Rick Scott now. So it's been interesting to see this public pressure. And if it would be absolutely amazing if X engineered or the pressure from X engineered enough votes to come over to support Rick Scott on this. I honestly don't think it's going to be enough. I think that secret vote people are going to hide behind that so that they don't have to face facts on how they voted. But ultimately, I think it's for the good, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough.
I also think, though, they should probably wait until these other guys all take office. I'm just throwing that out.
Well, that's just it, right, Joe? They're going to have 53, 54 senators when it's all said and done. And a lot of those are guys like, Montana's new senator is going to be pretty damn based. The people who might not vote the way they want them to vote. So this is I think this is Mitch McConnell's final fuck you to Donald Trump before he heads off into the sunset. All right, where are we at here?
Turtle soup, anyone? Sorry.
Turtle soup, yeah. So there's been some word that maybe Trump and Putin had a call, but I'm also hearing that this is all bullshit too. So let's see what the story says. President-elect Donald Trump is already moving quite fast on his goal to bring an end to the Ukraine war. It's been revealed Sunday. So I hear this is an AP source and that it turned out to be totally bullshit. So let's read what it says because this will be all over the news.
It's an AP source, so take that for everything that it's worth, which
Ukraine
is nothing.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's true, but I wouldn't also be surprised to find out if this is total bullshit. Trump urged immediately de-escalation in the call with Putin. The Washington Post describes during the call, which Trump took from his resort in Florida, he advised the Russian president not to escalate the war in Ukraine and reminded him of Washington's sizable military presence in Europe. Said a person familiar with the call who, like others interviewed for the story, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter. The irony is this is exactly the kind of chicanery I would expect from some swamp creature who's trying to kind of cozy up to the Trump administration. Multiple sources said that the call focused on the goal of peace in the European continent and ended on a positive note with plans to hold future conversations in the on resolution of Ukraine's war soon. Let's see. Washington Post also underscores Trump's transition team fearful of links at this point. Trump's initial calls with world leaders are not being conducted with the support of the State Department and U.S. government interpreters. The Trump transition team has yet to sign an agreement with the General Services Administration, a standard procedure for presidential transitions. Trump and his aides are distrustful of career government officials, as well they should be, following the leaked transcripts of presidential calls during his first term. They are calling Trump directly, one of the people familiar with the call said. You know, Joe, this is heartening, right? I feel like at every turn I'm seeing little pieces of evidence that Trump and the people around him have really learned some lessons this time around. I mean, I'm still, I want to see the full slate once things start getting closer, but the little things here and there are hopeful.
Sure.
I mean, what do you think?
I think he's going to continue to take advice, and he's going to be better, but he's still going to take bad advice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's possible to weed out all the snakes, but ultimately, he's also Donald Trump, right? So,
yeah,
Dmitry
Medvedev came from the top rope yesterday, saying it's funny how all these people said that the guy was a Russian asset all along. But then now that he's been reelected, everyone's rushing to kiss his ring. And
kiss his ring, yeah,
he's not wrong, right? The guy might be a complete jerk, but he's not wrong.
Well, literally, Urban was the only guy in Europe that was supportive of Trump throughout the whole time, right? I mean, I get the feeling that. There's going to be some frosty. So Keir Starmer, how the hell is he going to be able to, be taken seriously after the way he kind of spoke about Trump?
Well, the opposition leader, she really let him have it, actually, the other day.
Yeah,
because I guess the foreign minister said some pretty bad remarks. And she said, has the foreign minister apologized, or have you, as the prime minister, apologized on behalf of the British government? I mean, she literally laid into him, and she's not wrong either, right? You have to work with Donald Trump whether you like him or not at this point.
All right. So, and this all comes on the note that yes, the Russians are pressing their advantage in the Donbass. Like we talked a little bit about this earlier in the show. I think they're going to do everything they can to essentially basically seize as much land as they can in the time leading up to, when they have to essentially make a deal, because I feel like that's what's going to end up happening. There's going to be enough pressure applied by Trump in a manner that I think it will be carrot and the stick, and ultimately Russia will have to acquiesce. Let's see. I thought this was interesting because it sounds like Trump is talking about putting NATO troops in between the armies, the Ukrainian and Russian armies. I don't know if I don't know what this
Russians will never go for that.
Yeah, I could see a DMZ, like some sort of situation, but I can't see some sort of like a peacekeeping force.
They also won't go for the OSCE, which is like the EU only version of NATO, right? The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, because there were too many conflicts between OSCE observers, their security teams, and the Russians. before the war started. So,
Yeah, the OSCE was pretty ineffectual in that whole period.
I know this is off topic and it's not even a super chat, but I do have to respond to something in chat. Somebody says they don't understand the Mitch McConnell turtle statements, and I
Because he looks like a turtle.
very
Yeah,
simple.
hold on.
Pull up a picture of a turtle. Pull up a picture of Mitch McConnell. Very simple.
No, I got it. It's right here. Are you telling me you don't see it? Really?
There it is.
Okay.
My mom is like, made fun of that guy for 20 years about that. Before it was cool, but then again, she used to be a Democrat. So
your mom's kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of things. So
true.
Yeah. All right. So this is a article. It's an op-ed from Andrew Corbico over on Substack. I think this is pretty interesting when I went through it. 10 obstacles to Trump's reported plan for Western NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine. So, like you said, Joe, there's definitely some issues here. Not the least being the Russians just are not probably going to like a lot of this stuff. But ultimately, I think the only thing that makes me think this could happen is that Russia's going to get a lot out of this. Ultimately, right? Ukraine's going to be ultimately the one that's the most pissed off, but because their people are dying by the bucket loads, they will go for it. Let's see. The first one is that Europeans fear a direct kinetic escalation with Russia. And I absolutely agree with this. I think there are some people in like the Baltic dwarves and whatnot that are kind of spoiling for a fight. But the only reason why they're spoiling for a fight is because they want America to do the fighting for them, not because they, are secure in their ability to stand up to Russian forces. Or their ability to stand up to Russian forces is directly tied to the America coming in and basically saving their bacon. Public opinion in Poland, linchpin is strongly against this. So it's difficult to imagine a Western Ukrainian peacekeeping mission in Ukraine without Poland leading participation. But public opinion is strongly against this after a reputable survey over the summer showed that 69% of Poles are opposed to dispatching troops to the neighboring country in any capacity. Joe, I think it's unlikely for Russia to see any country who directly supported Ukraine during the fight be along the borders, with the exception maybe of the U.S., right? It sounds to me like it needs to be some sort of, neutral third parties, like let's get Ghana to throw in a bunch of, let's let ECOWAS, come in and do it.
Terrari and the boys. Random PNW guy mentions India, which would normally be a good choice, except India buys all their weapons from Russia. So Russia could force some influence that way. And by the way, what does the I in BRICS stand for? But
well, that would be interesting. What if BRICS members had to supply the troops?
Brazil, potentially. I would make it Brazil more so than anyone else because they're less reliant on either side.
Well, the irony is Brazil, Colombia, there's many northern African countries are all NATO partners. Would be interesting if they made this a NATO partner mission, so only partners did it. So let's see. It says here that Trump's prior rhetoric about, let's be honest, Trump has been pretty much saying that he's willing to leave NATO hanging if NATO doesn't.
Audio is all over the place, up and down.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were just screaming in our faces and then you threw back down. So.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, I'm just kind of talking normal. It says, well, the whole point here in the article is that he's got a spotty history with Article 5. Well, that's because he's basically said, listen, if you don't do your piece, we're not going to save your bacon. It's unclear exactly what Trump would do if Russia hit NATO troops. Let's be honest. Russia doesn't want to hit NATO troops. I mean, anybody who's coming up with a fantasy that Russia's going to attack NATO is out to lunch.
I know who could do this. Madagascar. Sorry. Oh, those are the Indians again. Never mind.
Yeah, right. Let's see. NATO is unprepared for a prolonged non-nuclear hot war with Russia. Well, this is absolutely very true. But ultimately, if they were to do some sort of a buffer zone, it wouldn't involve any kind of a hot war. It would be a negotiated settlement. Only after, these troops would only be, entered into the area once the war had absolutely stopped. External mediation could lead to a scaled-back peacekeeping mission. Cautious Europeans might wager that it's better just to cut their losses. I mean, I could see that, right? Especially if Ukraine is forced to become neutral. I mean, Joe, we were talking before the war even started that if Ukraine just became neutral, that would solve almost all the problems that Russia had with Ukraine.
I believe that was the original agreement that we, not Russia, we broke.
Yeah. Well, right, and that goes back to the coup, the Maidan, all the Maidan-related stuff.
Josh Clark, hear me out. North Korean and South Korean troops can man the border. Oh,
well, at least they'd be. Oh, look, it's Sam Kim. We're good old buddies from the DMZ. Used to stare at him across.
Troops might actually not be objectionable to either side.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they're pretty tapped out right now, I think.
They can run it with the space laser. The Jamaican peacekeeping team. Right.
A Cuba-like brinksmanship crisis could break out before Trump's re-inauguration. I don't see that happening.
All I'm saying, listen, hold on. Before we move on, this has to be said. Yeah. All I am saying is that a Cool Runnings style movie about a Jamaican security team that starts up in order to aid one of these situations, I would watch it. I would watch it 1,000 times.
But there's already a free preview of that, and Reaper's been sharing it. It's the promotional videos from some of the South African security companies that are led by disadvantaged businesses, let's just say. And boy, that's beautiful. You are more at risk from your security team than you are from anyone else.
I saw that video. I couldn't believe it. How many times did that guy get flagged by his security team?
Flagged with the AR a lot. The AR with no sights on it whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh my God. It probably was an airsoft rifle, by the way. There's a chance that Russia achieves maximum victory before then too. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Russia's on a tear in the Donbass. They've pretty much cut half of the not Kharkiv, the Kursk kind of area down. I wouldn't be surprised to see Russia take some pretty strategic points along the line, but before Trump comes into office. And the West Asian wars worsen, and Trump's immediate priority. You mean that Russia and Ukraine may not be that big of a deal? Shocking, Joe. I say shocking. I thought Russia and Ukraine was the most important thing in the world.
I heard it's the only thing.
Yeah. So
Trump's prior rhetoric about Article 5 doesn't inspire confidence. Article 5 has no place whatsoever in Ukraine.
Well, right. That's exactly right. I mean, ultimately, that's about they're worried that Trump would leave Europe high and dry. Well, maybe that's not a bad idea.
Even if we inserted NATO troops into Ukraine and Russia, an attack on the NATO troops in there would not trigger Article 5.
Because that's exactly right. Because they're deployed in an external role.
There they are. There they are.
Yeah, these are the guys I want to see on the border.
They're probably trained by that guy in Detroit.
Thank you, Grok. I just have to thank you so much, Grok.
Oh my gosh. All right. Hey, I got one that I've kind of popped up, and Joe, this is the kind of thing I want to see out of the Trump administration. The Trump administration transition team. This is what I want to see.
I want them to run the.
This is Trump's plan for the
one other thing I'll be doing very
Department
early
of Education.
In the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place. And you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states. Thank you very much. One other thing I'll be doing very early.
So,
It never should have been a federal matter.
Amen, brother. Right. It never should have been a federal agency, and it never should have been there's nothing in the Constitution about the federal government's involvement in education. The 10th Amendment absolutely applies here. And, Joe, there's probably half of the federal the cabinet level agencies kind of fall in that category. I mean, we could go down the list. I mean, we were joking about Brandon Herrera becoming the head of the ATF. Only as a ceremonial position while we enact the dismantle and
designated
dispersal
switch shutter offer.
Exactly right. And I want him to have an AK-50 in his hand when he does it.
Well, actually, you know what? I'd kind of be okay if he decided to turn it into a regional chain of gas stations, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and fuel. I'm kind of down for this.
Yeah, I would go to a gas station.
You know what?
Itself.
Turn it over to Buc-ee's.
Yeah. Couldn't you? Yeah, couldn't. Yeah, Buc-ee's just franchise the ATF.
Federalized businesses is not the answer. I did like his comments on making constitutional carry a nationwide thing, but that would require a law passed. So he can say that all he wants until someone actually passes that as a law. He can't sign it and make it happen. So. But I do know this that the Federal Firearm Owners Protection Act guarantees that as long as I comply with the laws of the state I'm in and the state I'm going to, I can carry how those states apply in between. And both Montana and Missouri are constitutional carry. So,
yeah. Gentlemen, that's all I've got for the show today. I know there have been a bunch of other Trump videos out there for policies that he's going to enact. So I'm sure you guys have all seen those out there. As we get closer, probably, when we get closer to the inauguration, we'll get a little deeper into what he's going to do. As the plans become more firm, we're going to try to make sure that we're covering all of our international conflict areas. But guys, once again, I'll just say that if he puts us out of business, my prayers will have been answered.
Honestly, that's quite possibly true, because there were no major world conflicts that occurred during his tenure. So,
we'll have to figure out something else to talk about. We'll have maybe change the name of the show. I don't know. Council on far future conflicts.
No, we can talk about the conflicts that are going to happen when the next purchase arrives at my house.
Facts.
Whoa. I know this is something that Joe doesn't really care about, but Watcher, I just happened to look at my chart, and Bitcoin's at 84,000 right now.
Nice.
New all-time high.
Nice. Very nice.
Yep, it's been good. Trump's been good to Bitcoin, that's for sure. But Trump's been good to the stock market. You guys see how the stock market absolutely blew up after the election?
That's an outright condemnation of Democratic policies right there.
100%. It's absolutely people saying with their money, I'm willing to bet on the future of this country is what they're saying.
Yep.
The Council on Future Lack of Conflict.
Right on.
I mean, like I said, as much as I love doing this show and I love kind of digging down into these conflicts and everything like that, if the world became a much more peaceful place for the next 4 years, I would be absolutely
then we would
tickled.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we could switch it like looking at future weapons systems and that kind of stuff and procurements and how to develop
plague
the best
doctor
military
is
and lack
probably,
of conflict.
this is probably the best case scenario, and it probably won't happen. The best case scenario is at least we have a 4-year reprieve.
Well, I mean, if you watch,
I honestly, well, real quick, and I'll let you say, I honestly don't think we're going to have a real lack of conflicts. We just may not be directly involved in them, which, I hope is the case.
Yeah. If you watch Tucker and saw the hopefully likely pick for head of duty, he kind of mentioned that they don't really have 4 years. They have at best 18 months.
Well, yeah, keep in mind too that the other side gets a vote, and as much as we hope for no conflict, the Xi Jinpings of the world aren't getting any younger.
Yeah.
The Nicolas Maduros, and they have things they want to do. So the Guyana and Venezuela conflict has not gone away. So.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking to think that the world is going to, the South China Sea will continue on. I mean, we could become the Council on South China Sea conflict for the near future and probably remain gainfully employed. North Korea is not going anywhere. So the South Korea conflict, the Korea Peninsula will still continue to be active. I mean, there's a reason why we don't talk about South Korea a lot, because I'm here and I don't feel like, with me being as close to the conflict as I am, that it makes a whole lot of sense for me to talk about it. And there's some other things behind that too, but I'm not going to get into that. But ultimately, that's another area of conflict that's been here for the last, 70 years now. And it ain't going anywhere. If you think the South Korea, North Korea things go anywhere, forget about it. It'll always be here. All right, guys. Joe, final thoughts going into the week?
Don't write them off. They're not done yet. They're not really willing to just roll over and wait for next time.
Yeah, that's right. Watcher?
Oh, I was muted again.
Bueller?
Yes,
Bueller.
Final thoughts for me today, chat, are Mondays are in general a hard and uncaring place. So stay on the upswing, and to help you do that, possum.
I want to. This is the final thought that I'm going to leave you guys with is this. Wonderful. I hope this is true. I want this to be true. So let's manifest it into existence. CNN correspondent.
There is a feeling of dread.
CNN correspondent report federal workers report PTSD over Trump's return.
There is a feeling of dread among everyone. CNN's Renee Marsh is with us now. Renee, what are you hearing?
Well, John, we are in a new dystopian hellscape. That is from a federal employee via text message last night. And that is the mindset of many of the 2 million federal workers anticipating Donald Trump's return to office. Now, to be clear, what Donald Trump is promising for federal workers is unlike anything we have seen in our lifetime. He's proposing reverting to a structure of government that existed 141 years ago, when political parties gave government jobs to their supporters. And that's what has federal workers scared about Trump's plan known as Schedule F. Now,
guys, I can't vote for him again. I mean, if this is true, I mean, I want to.
We already did this.
I mean, you don't have to sell him anymore. Come on.
Give him the power to start these mass firings of nonpartisan career employees perceived as disloyal, who may get in the way of his policy actions at these agencies. As you know, Trump has obsessed on the campaign trail about the idea of federal workers being agents of the deep state working against him and his agenda. Now, some of the employees who lived through the first Trump administration say they are experiencing PTSD. One saying, quote, "We are absolutely having conversations amongst ourselves about whether we can stomach a round two."
No, you probably can't.
But that's the serious rhetoric they're talking about right there. The employees who lived through the prior Trump administration. The implication there for a low information voter is that there are some who did not live through it, right? It's just dumb. It's hyperbolic and it's moronic and it's stupid.
Well,
and the biggest lie she told in there was nonpartisan federal workers. There's no such thing.
I'm sure there's a couple somewhere buried real deep down, maybe.
If they were, they wouldn't work for the federal government.
Yeah, well, facts.
Well,
Hey, you know, if I wasn't already sold on Tom Homan enough, I got another clip to show why again this guy is the guy we need. I mean, we need like 10 of this dude, like in all kinds of different places in the federal government.
First of all, your comments are disgusting. I've served my country. I've served my country for 34 years. I find your comments disgusting as well. I've served my country for 34 years. And yes, I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms and back that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life was like. And I had a 5-year-old son at the time. What I've been trying to do my 34 years serving my nation is to save lives. So for you to sit there and insult my integrity and my love for my country and for children, that's why this whole thing needs to be fixed. And you're the member.
We agree on that.
Fix it.
We agree on that, but I disagree. But I also disagree with your characterization of immigrants as prone to criminality.
People for 3 decades on this.
Gentlemen, time is.
Look, you want to know why there's 50,000 people in detention? You want to know why we have 1 million illegal entries in the United States? You want to know why we have these issues? Because you have failed to secure the border. You have failed to work with this president to close the 3 loopholes we've asked for 2 years to close. So if you want to know why this issue exists, you need to look in the mirror. You have failed American people for not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Homan, please respect the chair and the authority of the chair. The time of the gentleman has expired.
I've asked you politely to let me go beyond my
respect
time.
my authority is literally what she just said.
Yeah, respect my. I gotta bang this gavel again. It's $100,000 every time I do this.
That's a Tom Homan. He don't get me go beyond his time.
Mr. Homan, we have approved an agreement between the Republicans and the Democrats.
Stormy's got a new crush now.
Increase the time of one witness, one member of Congress who was interrupted by a protest. That is done with the approval of the ranking member. Please respect the chair's authority.
I respect the chair's authority, but the chair.
Mr. Homan.
You work for me. I'm a taxpayer.
Yeah, you work for me. I'm a taxpayer.
So
what's funny is she thinks banging that hammer means something,
that
right?
You recommended family separation.
I recommend a zero tolerance.
We are
young child in a.
All right, I gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta get going.
Being here, appreciate you all. You know, we're gonna be talking about this stuff on and off over the next. I'm just really happy about this guy, and so he's based, and it's awesome. Guys, we'll be back on Wednesday. Thank you very much, chat. You were awesome. If you haven't done already, hit Stormy up and over on X and join the DM group. It looks like a lot of fun so far. And I'll definitely be doing that. And it's a good replacement for our guild. We're not going to do anything like what's the other one? We're not
Discord,
doing that.
Yeah,
we're not doing a Discord. So, all right, guys, that's all I've got. As always, if you haven't done already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, like the video, tell your friends. This is a good place to get this info. And as always, stay safe.